the Bilderberg Group, Atlantis, serpent DNA. Does the Vatican control the Freemasons? Or do the Freemasons control the Vatican? These people are sick. It's a big club, and you ain't in it. Symbolism will be their downfall. So, I'm somewhat interested in conspiracy theories. I don't believe in them, but it's one of those things, like cults or serial killers. I don't want to join a cult. I don't want to kill anybody, but when it happens, I take an interest. Ooh, what's going on here? It's good to start a video by saying something nice. So let's all go around and say our favorite thing about conspiracy theorists. I'll go first. My favorite thing about conspiracy theorists is their passion for diagrams. As long as the internet has existed, researchers have posted conspiracy diagrams. This is one from 1999 with Lucifer at the top. Before the internet, people had to draw these things by hand. The pyramid shape is considered traditional. I remember seeing this one around 2010. At the bottom are the debt slaves, the sheeple. You are here. Above us, world population control, religion, government, education, media, and then corporations, man. Then the banks, the think tanks, the elite families, the crown, and at the very top, the all-seeing eye. Maybe it's the Illuminati. Maybe it's the reptiles. Maybe it's Daddy when he's arrived and he's taking his belt off.
It's like Daddy arrived and he's taking his belt off.
Let's face it, most conspiracy diagrams look like the untethered scribblings of incurable screwballs. And maybe they are. But I think they're also a sincere attempt to understand the shape of power. Not a good attempt, but that's okay. I no longer expect good things. Every conspiracy diagram is an answer to the question, who really controls the world? The pyramid represents hierarchy. It's like those medieval drawings of the great chain of being. Medieval Europeans saw reality itself as a kind of pyramid, with God at the top, the supreme being. Each tier beneath him represents a lower emanation, the orders of angels, humans, animals, plants, and minerals. Medieval cosmology was a mirror of medieval politics. As below, so above. The feudal system was a pyramid, with the monarch at the top, then nobles, knights, vassals, merchants, peasants, and serfs. In 2023, passionate graphic designer Dylan Lewis Monroe created a conspiracy diagram called the World Hierarchy Pyramid. It combines the medieval great chain of being with every conspiracy theory. At the top is the Tetragrammaton, that's the Hebrew name of God. Then the angels, the extraterrestrials, dark AI, transdimensional ETs, the Borg, Anunnaki, Draco reptilians, Satan, Source, 2 Corinthians. Do your own research. Then, of course, the elite bloodlines, the secret societies, of course, and way down at the bottom, the Matrix, 9 to 5 debt slaves, peasants, sheep, cattle, NPCs, maskers, Monster energy drinks? Oh, they think it's satanic.
So you go into Hebrew. The letter Vav is also the number 6. You could have here in Hebrew 666 on the can. Now, do you know what a MILF is?
I do. Breeders. Hey, don't talk that way about straight people. One of my best friends happens to be... Wait a minute, does that say Goyim? Okay, it is way too early in the video for this. I'm trying to keep it fun, trying to keep it flirty. We're not dealing with Goyim for at least an hour. So put a pin in it, and for now, I'll pretend I didn't see that. The World Hierarchy Pyramid looks like something you'd find in the basement of a domestic terrorist.
Somerset!
How can someone be this wrong about every aspect of reality? Is anything about this right? Well, isn't it true that power is a pyramid? You could make a less crazy pyramid diagram. A 1911 illustration called The Pyramid of the Capitalist System. Oh God, we're already talking about capitalism. Never beating the bread tube allegations. The Pyramid of the Capitalist System has the workers at the bottom, then the bourgeoisie, the army, clergy, politicians, and at the very top, in place of the king, in place of God, is money itself. A conspiracy theorist would look at this and say, well, that can't be right. Money can't be at the top, because money does not conspire. Money has no plans, no intentions of its own. It isn't good or evil, it just is. So, who controls the money? Who really controls the world? What's up, you guys? Just checked into the Watergate Hotel. No need to break in, that's cute. Nice view. Not very private. Honestly, not a great place to do a conspiracy. Part 1. Just asking questions. So, I spent the last year of my life researching conspiracy theories online, and I'm not doing well.
Every time you saw Taylor Swift on your TV at the Super Bowl, you were flashed with demonic hand gestures and an inverted cross.
Did he just say Taylor Swift? I can't even tell reality from parody anymore. It's like that essay, A Modest Proposal, by Jonathan Swift. I feel like I'm losing my mind. So to ground myself, I tried asking some normal, non-terminally online people what they think about conspiracy theories. And what I found is that for most people, conspiracy theories are a mainly harmless game they play. The game of what if. You know, what if Tupac and Elvis are still alive? And what if they hang out in the UFO at Area 51 with Sasquatch and Taylor Swift's gay whiff? Sure. Why not? Speculating about who really killed JFK is basically America's pastime, because it's more exciting than baseball, and it's like a murder mystery. We all get to play detective. Was it the Russians? The CIA? Pro-Castro Cubans? Anti-Castro Cubans? Colonel Mustard on the grassy knoll with the magic bullet? America has a weird obsession with JFK. I feel like it's because of two things. 1, he's hot. 2, he's dead. And it's that combination of hot and dead that really gets our juices flowing. Whenever I imagine JFK, I see him silhouetted against soft white light, and he smiles at me lovingly in slow motion. JFK is America's beautiful dead wife in a flashback. He's our dead anime mom. Oka-san. I can't believe we fumbled her. So look, I hate to be a buzzkill. I know it's fun to speculate wildly about the secret conspiracies behind world events, but for me, it stopped being fun a long time ago. I can't pinpoint when exactly, but there's a couple moments that stand out. Exhibit A is Edgar Madison Welch, who on December 4, 2016, drove from North Carolina to Washington, D.C. and entered neighborhood pizzeria Comet Ping Pong with an AR-15 rifle, which he fired through a closet door, terrifying customers and staff. He later told police he was, quote, self-investigating. He was doing his own research. He was self-investigating the Pizzagate conspiracy theory, which falsely claimed that leaked emails from my close personal friend, Hillary Clinton, contained cryptic references to an elite underground satanic ritual murder and child sex trafficking operation. It's a shame, because baseless speculation about the lurid sexual depravity of the rich and famous can be a lot of fun. But when someone picks up a gun, the truth is not a game. The shooter would later tell the New York Times, quote, the intel on this wasn't 100%. Yeah? Exhibit B is America's foremost conspiracy theorist for the last quarter century, Alex Jones, live on InfoWars, mocking the father of a child who was killed at Sandy Hook. And I know Alex Jones has paid a heavy price for this, but it is pretty heinous.
I mean, it's like, yeah, oh, I read this card, okay. I mean, it's like, whoa.
I don't know, is this what questioning authority looks like? It's not just asking questions if the way you're going about it is, fiendish. Of course, when you point out the harm done by conspiracy theorists, they say, well, that's just controlled opposition. It's a psyop designed to make us look bad. And okay, I guess it's possible that it's a psyop, but isn't it also possible that you've simply surrounded yourself with assholes? Conspiracy theorists tend not to take criticism well. They feel like you're manipulating them, like you're shaming and vilifying people just for questioning official narratives. And isn't that exactly what they'd expect a shill for the deep state to do? Isn't conspiracy theorist just a slur for anyone who dares to snap out of their programming? A convenient way to silence anyone who questions the establishment? Well, it's good to be skeptical and it's good to ask questions, but there's a difference between intelligent skepticism and, for example, denying well-documented events on the basis of wild conjecture posted online by some maniac moments before harpooning his own parents. Just because you're asking questions doesn't mean the questions you're asking are good. Who really controls the moon? No one controls the moon, Vanessa. That's not a good question. Go back to your desk. Conspiracy theorists think of themselves as speaking truth to power and challenging the establishment. But is that even what they're doing? See, I can also ask questions. My first question is, which establishment are you questioning? Does this establishment include Donald Trump and Elon Musk? I notice Alex Jones and many other conspiracy theorists have taken to shilling for both of them, now that they are collaborating so closely. Conspiring, if you will. One thing we've seen in the United States over the last decade is that when an entire political party embraces conspiracy theories, you can't really say that conspiracy theorists are questioning propaganda, because the conspiracy theories are the propaganda. On December 2nd, 2015, presidential contender Donald Trump appeared as a guest on InfoWars with Alex Jones. Let's look at the comments. This video is shadow banned. The elite don't want the people to see this. 1984 is here. Okay, but the interview is on YouTube, and it was the first result when I Googled it. And Donald Trump is the president of the most powerful country in the world. So who exactly are the elite? Isn't what people call the elite or the establishment really just a bunch of warring factions? And isn't one of those factions the United States Republican Party, now essentially a right-wing conspiracist party? Their 3-time presidential nominee and 2-term president so far, entered politics in 2011 as a birther conspiracy theorist. But he was just asking questions, right? On January 6, 2021, the Capitol was stormed by 10,000 self-described patriots aiming to violently overturn the results of the 2020 election because of conspiracy theories spread by Trump and that scummy lawyer he used to hang out with.
Let's have trial by combat.
We will never give up. We will never concede. We will stop the steal.
A month earlier, Trump's former national security advisor Michael Flynn invoked the Stop the Steal conspiracy theory in a call for Trump to suspend the Constitution and declare martial law. Exactly the things conspiracy theorists have been worried about for decades. But when it actually happened in front of their eyes, they didn't notice, because the conspiracy theory was the propaganda. And in the background of all this, of course, was QAnon. I assume you all know what QAnon is, but sometimes it's good to verbalize it just to remind yourself how much the vibes have deteriorated. QAnon was an online messianic conspiracy cult whose core belief was that the world is ruled by a global elite of satanic, sex-trafficking cannibals from whom the children would be saved by reality TV star turned president Donald Trump, whose sacred mission was to declare martial law, end the adrenochrome harvest, and purge the deep state pedovore cabal in a wave of mass executions called the Storm. This he would accomplish with the help of military intelligence insiders known as Q, who only communicated with the public via cryptic messages on a seedy, racist image board called 8kun, operated by a father-son team of American pornographers out of a hog farm in the Philippines. The online conspiracy world has since moved on from QAnon. In fact, they'll tell you that it was actually controlled opposition and a distraction. Denial is always the last stage of these things. The so-called QAnon shaman, Jacob Chansley, now claims he was unfairly associated with QAnon by the media in, quote, an attempt to control the narrative and destroy my public image. It's not what he said 4 years ago.
Q most certainly did send me, ladies and gentlemen. Q is the highest levels of the military and the intelligence community in the United States. And they are disseminating above top secret information to patriots in our republic. That means people like you, so that we can take back our country from the communists and the globalists.
He now blames the whole thing on Antifa, Black Lives Matter, and the deep state.
And I think it's more like the deep state set up riots than Trump riots. I don't think Trump had people do that. I think it was more likely that the feds and the crowd and Antifa and BLM were largely responsible.
It's like the narcissist's prayer, you know? That didn't happen, and if it did, it wasn't that bad, and if it was Nancy Pelosi's fault, and if it wasn't, the deep state made me do it. It was controlled opposition that I was a part of, somehow. So no, I'm not just gonna pretend QAnon didn't happen because it would be convenient for you. If you just memory hole these things, then you never learn anything, and we just do it all again. American politics is post-QAnon in the sense of like post 9/11 or post-apocalypse. It's not like things are going back to the way they were, and more like this is just the way things are now. QAnon's core idea was that the world is ruled by a satanic pedophile elite who must be purged by a right-wing authoritarian takeover. And this idea is as popular as ever. Here's right-wing misogyny influencer and alleged sex trafficker Andrew Tate, I don't even want to be alive anymore, getting 131,000 likes on Elon's X.com for announcing that drag queens at the 2024 Paris Olympic opening ceremony prove that a satanic cabal controls the West. Here's Ambien enthusiast Roseanne Barr on stage with Tucker Carlson in September 2024, shrieking about cannibal vampires and riling up the crowd for another insurrection.
You know they eat babies. That is not bullshit. It's true.
So it's not just the dogs and the cats, not just the pets.
They're full-on vampires. They love the taste of human flesh and they drink human blood. Fauci gave everybody AIDS too. Did you know that? He did. Google it.
These are not fringe ideas anymore. Alex Jones has faded from relevance less because of his deplatforming and more because of the mainstreaming of his own ideas. He used to be king of the fringe, but now he's not so far from the center. A little fish in a big conspiracist pond. It would be an exaggeration to say that conspiracy theories have become the dominant form of political discourse, but not that much of an exaggeration. During the 2024 election season, 4 of the top 6 podcasters on Spotify were conspiracy theorists. President Trump's campaign was backed by Elon Musk, who tweeted about Pizzagate on the eve of the election, the result of which increased his net worth by $200 billion. And Musk, of course, has now been appointed to the newly created Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE. Well memed, my lord. You win, te interwebs today, good sir. Way to pwn les liberals epic style. Chatelet, my brothers, top keck.
Legalize comedy.
I'm this close to losing it. Don't fuck with me, fellas. Another conspiracist Trump appointment is RFK Jr. They should just nominate the Time Cube guy. Why not?
It rotates in 4 different directions simultaneously, toward midday, midnight, sun up, sundown. It rotates those directions simultaneously.
It's RFK Jr., who believes in chemtrails but not vaccines, who claims COVID-19 was ethnically targeted to spare Jews and the Chinese, who denies that AIDS is caused by HIV, who's promised that he, quote, won't take sides on 9/11. He forgot. So conspiracy theories are no longer for freaks in tinfoil hats making public access TV shows about Sasquatch. If that's all it was, I wouldn't care. It's not my business what you people do with Sasquatch in the privacy of your own bedroom. But now, conspiracy theories are for the freaks who run the country. And when it comes to deciding, which elections are rigged, or which mass tragedies are hoaxes, or which reptilians control the central banks, it kind of becomes everyone's business. Because for democracy to work, if that's still a thing by the time this video comes out, we, the people, need to have reasonable conversations with each other. And it's very hard to have reasonable conversations with people who think the World Health Organization is controlled by high-level Luciferian druids. So in this video, I just want to ask some questions, not about any particular conspiracy theory, but about conspiracism as a way of thinking. Why do so many people believe in conspiracy theories? Why are they so obsessed with symbols and rituals? Why are they taking over politics? Has this happened before? When did this start? Is the internet to blame? A funny thing about conspiracy theories is, no matter how wrong they are, engaging with them forces you to ask deep questions, because there really is something mysterious about truth and power. How do we know it's true? What authorities can we trust? Why do bad things happen? Why are there wars? Why is there poverty? Who really controls the world? In this video, I will answer all of these questions and more. So buckle your seatbelt, Kansas. We're gonna take the rabbit pill and find out just how deep Dorothy's hole goes. Part 2, the rabbit pill. Hello, Earthlings. Hope you're having a good trip. Let's start by looking at how conspiracy theorists argue. I need to teach you to counter those arguments so you can properly shill for the Galactic Empire. A common argument goes like this. Aren't there endless examples of real conspiracies? Everyone always thinks conspiracy theories are crazy until those theories are proven to be conspiracy fact. As a Trump supporter on Truth Social put it, not trusting the government doesn't make you a conspiracy theorist. It makes you a history buff. So on the one hand, yes, the government has done things that are bad. They've even deliberately done bad things in secret, which might be the definition of a conspiracy. And that's true of whatever country you live in, but I'm gonna focus on the US because the Saturnian order has commanded me to make America look bad. Easiest job they've ever given me. To choose a popular example, Project MKUltra was a wildly unethical CIA mind control experiment carried out in secret between 1953 and 1973. One of its goals was to develop a truth serum using substances like LSD and morphine. Now obviously this did not work, because morphine and LSD are terrible truth serums. Trust me, I've tried. We know about MKUltra because after the Watergate scandal, Congress investigated intelligence agency abuses and uncovered CIA documents that were supposed to have been destroyed. The details are very scandalous. In an operation known as Midnight Climax, the CIA lured men into San Francisco brothels, dosed them unknowingly with LSD, and observed their behavior through a one-way mirror. In another experiment, US Army biologist Frank Olson was given LSD without his knowledge or consent, and he died 1 week later after falling from a 13th-story hotel window under suspicious circumstances. It's true that there's no shortage of real conspiracies. I'll put some on the screen right now and you can do your own research. So you can't really blame people for wondering, if this is the stuff that's declassified, what else are they doing that we don't know about? Probably a bunch of messed up stuff. I'm not going to disagree with you there. And many conspiracy theories do have some kind of resemblance to things that actually happened. Anti-vaccination conspiracy theories are almost entirely baseless. But in 2011, the CIA located Osama bin Laden in Pakistan by secretly collecting blood samples under the pretext of a fake vaccination program. QAnon is total madness, but when high-profile men like Epstein or Diddy are outed as prolific sex criminals, it's not unreasonable to wonder how many other rich and famous people are complicit in those crimes. So with so much evidence of real conspiracies, why shouldn't we take the rabbit pill and go down Dorothy's hole? Well, in short, because conspiracy theories have less in common with real conspiracies than might initially seem to be the case. Conspiracists will tell you that the term conspiracy theory was invented by the CIA to discredit anyone who questions official narratives. This is not true. Quote, recorded use of the phrase conspiracy theory dates back to at least 1863, more than 60 years before the CIA was established. That's according to the Associated Press, but I guess that's the mainstream media, and we can't trust them. I only trust truth seekers posting about med beds from a garage and telling me to buy cryptocurrency. When the quantum financial system hits and I finally get my Nisara Gasara deposit, you'll see. You'll all see. The difference between actual conspiracies and conspiracy theories has to do with evidence. When we talk about conspiracy theories, we're not talking about scientific theories, like the theory of gravity, which is a well-substantiated hypothesis. At least for you people. It's actually completely false, but they won't let me talk about that. We're using the word theory in the non-scientific sense of unsubstantiated conjecture and speculation. Just a theory. As in the theory that Katy Perry is John Benet Ramsey, or that Jeffrey Epstein is a 300-year-old vampire who used to be Andrew Jackson. Conspiracy theories are by definition unsubstantiated, in the way that UFOs are by definition unidentified. If you know what the object is, then it's not an unidentified flying object. If credible sources confirm a conspiracy occurred, then it's not a conspiracy theory. And to conspiracy theorists, a confirmed conspiracy becomes part of the official narrative, part of the puppet show, and is therefore itself something to be questioned. You see this all the time with MKUltra, where the actual documented events only interest conspiracy theorists insofar as they inspire unsubstantiated speculation that what we know is just the tip of the iceberg. So conspiracy theories are to investigative journalism as cryptozoology is to zoology. Zoology, the study of animals, is a scientific endeavor based on standards of evidence. Cryptozoology, the search for Bigfoots, Yetis, various Mothmen, is a crackpot monster hunting activity based on a parascientific pursuit of mystery for the sake of mystery. Not to be too harsh on cryptozoology, I'd rather people hunt Mothmen than do QAnon. If you're torn between the two, I want you to promise me that you will not rest until you have that Mothman's head. Cryptozoology is not a science, because when a new species is scientifically acknowledged, it's no longer crypto, no longer secret, and is therefore outside the domain of cryptozoology. When the unknown becomes the known, its mystique is gone, and the mystique is the entire point. This is why conspiracy theorists have always been obsessed with secret societies, like the Freemasons or the Illuminati. What interests them is secrecy itself. YouTube is full of videos like hidden camera exposes Freemason rituals, or like forbidden videos inside the Mormon temple. Incredibly boring things become obsessively fascinating if you simply tell people that it's secret and they're not allowed to know about it. The conspiracist classic None Dare Call It Conspiracy by Gary Allen, a major influence on Alex Jones, describes conspiracy research as, quote, history's greatest whodunit, a mystery thriller. I think this reveals a lot about the conspiracist mindset. Conspiracy research is a thrill-seeking activity. People don't become conspiracy theorists because they followed rational arguments to an evidence-based conclusion, which is not to say that conspiracy theorists aren't interested in evidence. They're very interested in evidence. They accumulate vast webs of evidence. They're passionate about investigation, about doing their own research. 9/11 truthers will often give at least a superficial impression of being well-versed in structural engineering. They present facts about the temperature at which jet fuel burns. They start using words like nanothermite. They have confident opinions about whether Building 7 could have collapsed from fire. But I think it's a mistake to see conspiracy discourse as some kind of botched attempt at rational inquiry. I don't think it is. But why not? There's a particular type of evidence that conspiracy theorists usually rely on, what they call anomalies. An anomaly is anything that seems subjectively suspicious, improbable, or inexplicable. A glitch in the matrix. For example, the Apollo 11 press conference is constantly cited by moon landing hoaxers because the astronauts appear at times dejected and morose. Conspiracy theorists interpret this anomaly as proof that the astronauts are being forced to perpetrate a scam on the American people. Poor men, clearly under threat of death if they reveal the truth. That they went nowhere near the moon. I'm trying to be open-minded here, but their body language says they never went anywhere. I've seen people more hyped about a visit to the mall. Isn't it also possible that they were, I don't know, tired After flying to the moon? I guess everyone on the internet is an expert body language analyst, so what do I know? In the summer of 2020, a conspiracy theory spread on social media claiming that missing children were being trafficked by online furniture retailer Wayfair. The evidence for this conspiracy was an anomaly on Wayfair's website, where certain pillows and cabinets were listed for $10,000, an outrageously inflated price. Some of these items had names that just so happened to correspond to names of children who'd been reported missing. People on Twitter started wondering, wasn't it possible these children were being sold into depraved sexual slavery and trafficked inside of pillows and cabinets? A lot of people jumped to that conclusion without stopping to consider alternative explanations. Like, for example, maybe there was an error on the website. Maybe the products were named by SEO optimization algorithms looking for frequently searched names. Or maybe giving human names to products is just a fairly common marketing practice. The Stephanie upholstered armchair, the Vanna tufted sofa. This one's not even on Wayfair. Adelia is at Home Depot. My God, this goes all the way to the top. Don't worry, Adelia, we'll break you out of your velvet prison. The Wayfair missing children did later turn up, by the way. One 18-year-old girl went live on Facebook to reassure the public that she was fine and not, in fact, being sex trafficked inside of a cabinet. But conspiracy theorists in the chat were not relieved. In fact, they were annoyed that their investigation was being debunked. One woman commented, "Put her ass back in the cabinet." For a more convincing example of the argument from anomalies, let's look at Loose Change, the 2005 documentary that defined the 9/11 truther movement. Loose Change is essentially just a big list of 9/11 anomalies, including some that actually are pretty, well, anomalous, like the discovery of a hijacker's passport at Ground Zero.
7 different black boxes, made from the most resilient materials known to man, were all completely destroyed beyond repair. Yet, a passport, made from a fragile material known as paper, managed to fly through a 2,000-degree explosion and land undamaged blocks away, where the FBI conveniently found it, thereby incriminating Saddam al-Sakami and al-Qaeda for the attacks. Who writes this stuff?
Isn't it weird that a passport would survive a 2,000-degree explosion? Like, yeah, it is extremely weird. How do we explain that? Well, my explanation is that sometimes weird things happen. In 1987, Northwest Airlines Flight 255 crashed shortly after takeoff in Detroit, killing 156 people. Everyone on the plane died except for one 4-year-old girl. How could a 4-year-old survive a plane crash that killed more than 100 adults? Isn't that anomalous? It's super fucking anomalous. But you know what? Sometimes anomalous things happen. How did the hijacker's passport end up at Ground Zero? Well, I really don't know. Maybe God guided the passport to safety. Maybe an Al-Qaeda operative handed it to police because they wanted to get caught. Maybe it was planted by a reptilian. It was me. I did it. Me and my close personal friend Hillary Clinton. None of this is plausible, but is it more plausible that the Bush administration planted such a weird piece of ultimately superfluous evidence in the course of orchestrating this secret controlled demolition of the tallest buildings in New York City, and that no one involved in any stage of that process has leaked anything about it for over 2 decades? God, am I really debating 9/11 truthers online? Have I really learned nothing in 23 years? The thing about anomalies is that they never really amount to any kind of substantive evidence that a conspiracy occurred. The argument from anomalies is often just a series of statements beginning, "Isn't it weird? Isn't it weird that cabinets on Wayfair are listed for $10,000? Oh my God, that's really anomalous. Isn't it weird that Sirius, the hero dog of 9/11, was photographed with Bill Clinton exactly 1 year before the attack? Yes. It's weird. You have proven that a weird thing happened, but that's all you've proven. It's a style of argument based entirely on innuendo, conjecture, and asking leading questions designed to push the audience to a speculative conclusion. It's like that History Channel show Ancient Aliens, where the phrase, "Is it possible?" occurs with comical frequency.
Is it possible that Bigfoot is actually an extraterrestrial?
Is it possible the moon is not only hollow, but an artificial structure? Is it possible that the story of the Minotaur is based on actual events? Is it possible that the octopus didn't originate on Earth?
Is it possible that what we have here are extraterrestrials
wearing some type of protective suits.
Is it even possible that Nessie is an alien entity that is able to pass through a wormhole that exists at Loch Ness?
Like, yes, lots of things are possible because possibility requires a very low threshold of evidence. It's possible the moon is controlled by reptiles. It's possible that life is but a dream. This rhetoric of asking leading questions functions in part as disavowal, because technically you're not making any claims, you're just asking questions. But it also provokes the imagination of the audience. It makes you feel like you're connecting the dots on your own. And that's exciting. It's engaging. It makes you feel smart, like you're an independent investigator, a free thinker. You're not a sheep who believes whatever the Mockingbird mainstream media forces down your throat. You do your own research. But do you? No, Patrick. Scrolling Telegram channels about how the Knights Templar are using 5G networks to make you eat bugs is not research. No one likes to feel like a passive receiver of information. Okay, well, some people do. Fleabag, maybe.
I want someone to tell me what to eat, what to like, what to hate, what to rage about.
But conspiracy theories appeal to people who want to feel in control of their beliefs. And I do kind of sympathize with that. I don't want to get knowledge cucked by some high priest telling me what to believe. This attitude is not at all unique to conspiracy theorists. Individualist skepticism is sort of the foundation of Western philosophy. The modern era in philosophy starts with Descartes, who wanted to question everything. In the Middle Ages, you had to accept the doctrines of the church, or they'd call you a heretic and they'd burn ya. But Descartes thought that knowledge shouldn't be based on dogma, it should be based on reason. And that does sound good, doesn't it? The problem, though, is that if you question everything, then how do you know that anything is true? Descartes argued you can't even trust your own senses, because you could be dreaming right now. You could be deceived by an evil demon. So Descartes wanted to discover an idea that could not be doubted, and he came up with this Latin slogan, cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am, which has to be true, because it's on t-shirts and coffee mugs, popular everywhere among people who want you to know they went to college. From the cogito, Descartes tried to deduce that God exists and that God wouldn't allow a demon to deceive you. It's not a very good argument. Descartes is not a good philosopher. The problem is that knowledge is inherently a collective endeavor, and that's even more true now than it was in Descartes' time. You can't really do science by yourself anymore. To some extent, you have to trust the work of other people. Conspiracy theorists don't trust science because science is an institution and they don't trust institutions. A lot of conspiracy theorists go even further than that, and they adopt this oppositional attitude to knowledge. In other words, whatever they want you to believe, the opposite is probably true. On a YouTube clip of Richard Nixon telling Billy Graham that there will be a pogrom in America if the Jews, quote, don't start behaving, the top comment reads, I always wondered why I was conditioned to dislike Nixon by the media. Things are starting to make sense. This idea that every mainstream source of information is conditioning from the Judeo-Bolshevik banking cabal leads to a kind of fetish for stigmatized and secret knowledge. Conspiracy theorists play up how persecuted and silenced they are because they see institutional opposition as proof of their correctness. An Austrian painter and conspiracy theorist once said in his book, My Struggle, oh, poor baby, my struggle. He should have just called it My Journey. My whole entire journey. He wrote that the media's insistence on the protocols of the Elders of Zion being an anti-Semitic hoax is, quote, the best proof that they are authentic. This is one reason why conspiracy theories are impossible to debunk. The attempt to debunk them is seen as shilling, and therefore as proof of the conspiracy. If it isn't true, why are you so eager to disprove it? Conspiracists see the media, the academy, the medical establishment, every reputable source of information as a kind of Cartesian demon lulling us all into a dream world from which their goal is to awake. And it's this experience of awakening that conspiracy theorists are trying to trigger, with an overwhelming gish gallop of anomalies that eventually climaxes in a wild leap in logic. The most egregious example of this possibly ever is the Dutch conspiracy theorist Janet Ossebaard's 10-part video essay Fall of the Cabal, which recruited millions of people into QAnon in 2019 and 2020. Fall of the Cabal begins with a section called Things that made me go,
What I'm going to do is first of all give you a short overview of things that made me go,
Things that made me go, is just a random list of anomalies. Not arguments, just questions. Isn't it weird?
Isn't it weird that the Vatican's audience hall is full of references to reptilians? Did you know the Vatican's telescope is called Lucifer? And since when does the Pope make the sign of the devil? 9/11.
Wow, that's really anomalous.
Are you aware of the fact that children cartoons contain subliminal messages of sex and violence? Why?
That's super fucking anomalous. Fall of the Cabal does allude to a few things that are real. Like, yes, Monsanto and Bayer are companies that make carcinogenic herbicides. That's true. But then that's just casually mixed in with, blood libel.
Do you realize that these foreskins are actually sold? That it's a trade? What's next? Drinking baby blood?
Look, what is the point of this? There's no logical connection between any of these points. It's just a bunch of ominous innuendo leading the viewer to the vague conclusion that something isn't adding up. We've been lied to. And that is always the preface. We've been lied to. What is the purpose of opening with that? Well, if you can make your audience feel like everything they've ever been told is a lie, like science is fake, like school is indoctrination, the news is propaganda, the so-called fact-checkers are dangerous.
The so-called fact-checkers are dangerous.
It leaves the audience in a very vulnerable position, because now they have nowhere to turn for reliable information, because you've convinced them not to trust anyone, and now they don't know what to believe. And if you're a propagandist, that's exactly where you want them. Because most people are uncomfortable with doubt and uncertainty. It leaves you open to alternative explanations, even bad ones, because any explanation feels better than none. So this is the critical moment, when you make the logical leap into hyperspace. You've broken the audience down, and now you get to build them back up. You get to be the Morpheus telling them how deep the rabbit hole goes. And you may as well go ham, because at this point, they'll just believe anything you say.
Get ready for some conspiracy facts. The North American Man-Boy Love Association. This is their mascot. Why are children exposed to Illuminati symbols, chemtrails, cannibalism? George Soros. The Rothschild family. Follow the money. Adrenochrome is real. It is the ultimate drug. The same Church of Satan Chelsea Clinton is so fond of. If you can really jump from one timeline to another parallel one, you can time travel. I have grown to fully trust Don, master of all masters. He is a genius, a 5D chess player, a man with a huge heart. Q is not a cult.
The most insidious thing about this form of indoctrination is that, to the people susceptible to it, it feels like critical thinking. They think they're connecting the dots, asking questions the sheeple can't handle. They noticed the anomalies, they followed the money, no one told them what to think, except you kinda did tell them what to think. You just did it in a way that made them feel like it was their idea. And when people feel like something is their idea, they internalize it as part of their identity. They become possessive of it. Where they once may have been open to skepticism, they'll now be on guard against it, ready to dismiss it reflexively as shilling. So the point of the argument from anomalies is not to support a conclusion with evidence. The point is to trigger a crisis of belief that primes the audience for a kind of conversion experience, an initiation into the cult of mystery, of secret alternative knowledge. And that conversion experience is called the awakening, going down the rabbit hole, taking the red pill. It's hard to overstate the influence of 1999 cyberpunk science fiction film The Matrix, a great movie whose legacy is unfortunately tainted by association with every manner of Looney Tunes buffoonery. The Matrix became the centerpiece of 21st century mythology that it is because its allegory of awakening from a dream is a universal archetype. In Western philosophy, there's Plato's cave, Descartes' demon. Lenin says the revolution will arrive with the workers' awakening of class consciousness. In Hindu and Buddhist thought, the illusion is called Maya, a deceit that conceals the true nature of things. What's called enlightenment by Western Buddhists is a 19th century translation of the Pali term bodhi, which is more literally translated as awakening. So the Matrix can mean whatever you want it to mean. The directors of the movie now claim that it's an allegory for transgender awakening. But whatever your interpretation, taking the red pill is to awake from a dream world. It's a revelation that explains the feeling you've had all your life that something is vaguely wrong.
You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind.
By taking the red pill, Neo undergoes a rite of passage, symbolically dying in the dream world to be reborn in the desert of the real. For Neo, this also entails the realization that he is, in fact, the main character of reality, which also probably speaks to something in the conspiracist mindset. When conspiracy theorists tell you to wake up, they're not trying to persuade you about the causes of a particular historical event. They're urging you to transform the way you think about the world in general. Dylan Lewis Monroe's Q-Web diagram connects the dots from Atlantis to the Rothschilds to the Vatican to 9/11 to reptilian extraterrestrials to Obama's fake birth certificate. It's all connected. In the Q-Web, the Western pyramidal hierarchy has been replaced with a mesmerizing Eastern tangle, which the authors of Conspirituality compare to a Buddhist mandala meant to guide the viewer to awakening. So, what is it that conspiracy theorists are awakening to? Wake up. Part 3. Conspiracism. So wake up to what? Well, like every convert, conspiracists are awakening to a new worldview, which I'm calling conspiracism. And yes, it deserves to be an ism, because it's not a theory, it's a way of thinking. The details constantly change, but the fundamental mindset remains the same. In his 1964 essay, The Paranoid Style in American Politics, historian Richard Hofstadter said that conspiracist thinking was not unique to his own era of hysteria about looming one-world communist government. He tracked its roots all the way back to the founding of the United States, when there was a panic about the Bavarian Illuminati infiltrating the Freemasons and plotting to replace Christianity with Jacobinical atheism. In 1798, Timothy Dwight, president of Yale University, said, quote, "Shall our sons become the disciples of Voltaire and the dragoons of Marat? Or our daughters the concubines of the Illuminati?" The concubines of the Illuminati. I, for one, welcome my new sex lord, Adam Weishaupt. When I heard he was professor of canon law at Ingolstadt, I was like, oh my god, that's so fucking hot. That same year, George Washington received a letter from a German reverend warning him of a, quote, "society of Freemasons that distinguishes itself by the name of Illuminati, whose plan is to overturn all government and all religion." This conspiracy theory was popularized by John Robeson's 1797 book, Proofs of a Conspiracy, against all the religions and governments of Europe carried on in the secret meetings of Freemasons, Illuminati, and reading societies collected from good authorities. Well, if it's from good authorities, Washington wrote back, quote, "I have heard much of the nefarious and dangerous plan and doctrines of the Illuminati," but he assured the minister that the Freemasons in America were not involved. So, conspiracism has existed for a long time. Illuminati conspiracy nonsense crossed George Washington's desk, but we could go back even further than that. In the year 64, there were conspiracy theories that the Great Fire of Rome was an inside job ordered by Emperor Nero. Olive oil can't melt marble columns. Nero, of course, blamed the Christians. Christians were in many ways the Jews of ancient Rome. Well, the Jews were also the Jews. They often are. So this is not a new way of thinking. The internet did not start this. It's actually kind of amazing how consistent conspiracist rhetoric is across centuries. Another passage from that letter to Washington reads, "Our present time, pregnant with the most shocking evils and calamities, threatens ruin to our liberty and government. Secret, the most secret plans are in agitation." Like, it sounds like someone translated Alex Jones into 18th century English. According to Hofstadter, the paranoid style is characterized by, quote, "heated exaggeration, suspiciousness, and conspiratorial fantasy, as well as feelings of persecution. It's overheated, over-suspicious, over-aggressive, grandiose, and apocalyptic in expression." Sound like anyone you know? But I think conspiracism is more than just a rhetorical style. It also has certain core beliefs. Political scientist Michael Barkun says the 3 principles of conspiracism are: nothing happens by accident, nothing is as it seems, and everything is connected. I agree, but I want to use a slightly different definition because I do my own research. I'll call the three principles of conspiracism intentionalism, dualism, and symbolism. Now pay attention, because this will be on the test. Intentionalism is the idea that everything that happens is the result of a deliberate plan, that there are shadowy agents of evil scheming behind every misfortune. There are no accidents, and no significant event is the result of mere human ignorance or incompetence, or of systemic forces beyond human intention. Dualism is the idea that all of human history and politics are best understood as an epic battle between good and evil, the forces of light against the forces of darkness. When bad things happen, when there are wars, disasters, poverty, these are simply the result of evil people doing evil things because they're evil. And finally, symbolism is the idea that everything has meaning and everything is connected. So politics and history are sort of astrological in nature. There are no coincidences. Everything is teeming with signs and symbols that we can decode to discover the truth and define the future. Now, these are all pretty common patterns of thinking that most of us slip into sometimes. And not everyone who flirts with conspiracy theories is a full-blown conspiracist. But people who believe in all-encompassing super conspiracies like QAnon, the kind of people who think the Deep State Mapping Project is an accurate depiction of reality, those people are full-blown conspiracists. Now, let's explore the labyrinth of their madness in excruciating detail. It's okay, I've had a spiritual awakening. I've learned to enjoy losing subscribers. Conspiracist Principle 1. Intentionalism. Hello, my pretties. In October 2024, conspiracist Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. Marjorie, if you're watching this, I've already put a hex on you. It's too late. In October, Marjorie posted a series of tweets arguing that severe hurricanes in the southern United States were deliberately geoengineered by government agencies to suppress Republican voters. Damn, I wish it worked. A year earlier, Marjorie tweeted that climate change is a scam perpetrated by, quote, very powerful people that are getting rich beyond their wildest dreams, convincing many that carbon is the enemy. How can this woman believe that anthropogenic climate change is a hoax, but the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration is planning each specific hurricane? Well, because she's an idiot, but also because she's a conspiracist, and conspiracists believe that nothing happens by accident. So they cannot grasp the concept that carbon emissions might cause climate problems as an unintended byproduct of industrialization. But they have no problem whatsoever believing that big government Satanists are using HAARP to create hurricanes, and the Rothschilds are starting forest fires in California with Jewish moon lasers. This is intentionalism, the idea that everything that happens is the result of someone's plan. And if it's not immediately obvious whose plan it is, that must be because the plan is secret. Conspiracists see world events as a big puppet show. For every war, every terrorist attack, every recession, every pandemic, every election, revolution, or so-called natural disaster, there must be a man behind the curtain pulling all the strings. In the most general sense, intentionalism is a way of explaining why things happen. Why does a volcano erupt? Well, a scientist who cares about facts and data like a cuckold might say that the collision of tectonic plates forces magma through cracks in the Earth's crust, leading to an eruption. What a coincidence. Move along, sheeple. Nothing to see here. An intentionalist explanation would be that volcanoes erupt because someone makes them erupt. And who that someone is depends on the specifics of your worldview. An animist or polytheist might say that a volcano erupts because the mountain is angry, or the god of the mountain is angry. A monotheist might just say, because God is angry. Not all monotheists, but you know the type.
Go devil spawn, you just keep pushing on to the hell where you will forever burn.
And a conspiracist might say that volcanoes erupt because the globalists are using volcanic smoke signals to numerologically communicate the dates of upcoming wars, recessions, and terrorist attacks. I predicted in 2022 globalists would use Mount Etna smoke rings to signal war. They have done it before. 8 June 2000 equals 1 year, 3 months, 3 days before the 9/11 attacks, where buildings collapsed. Collapse equals 133. 8 June 2000. Mount Etna smoke ring stunt occurred on Kanye West's birthday. What a coincidence. Kanye West and Mount Etna have the exact same numerology. Checkmate. Geologists? At this point, I don't even know who we're checkmating. Conspiracism is pre-modern thought applied to postmodern politics. Karl Popper said, "The conspiracy theory of society comes from abandoning God and then asking, who is in his place? Well, apparently the globalists, or the deep state, or the Illuminati, the Freemasons, the Vatican, the World Economic Forum, the Bilderberg Group, the Satanic Cabal, the New York, Hollywood, international banking, Rothschild, Soros, communist Zionists. You know the ones. So there is disagreement among conspiracists about who they are, about who controls the world, who is the puppet master. But they all agree that someone is. It's a kind of intelligent design theory of world events. Conspiracism is to politics, economics, and apparently meteorology what creationism is to biology. And it's motivated by a lot of the same anxieties and misunderstandings. Like creationists will say, well, if God didn't create mankind in his own image, then I suppose it's just a random accident that one day monkeys gave birth to Meemaw. Okay, but that's not what the theory of evolution says. Science Cuck Chuck's book is not titled On the Origin of Species by Random Accident. Oopsie doopsie, new species originated. No, it's On the Origin of Species by Natural Selection. Natural selection is not random accident, it's a long-term process where heritable characteristics better suited to a particular— why am I bothering to explain this? Why am I even making this video? Why do anything at all? I guess for the pleasure of rolling the boulder up the mountain once again. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. Okay, well, don't tell me what to imagine. The point is, evolution doesn't need a plan. I mean, you could argue that evolution is God's plan, and okay, seems like a weird plan, but it's not weirder than ordering Abraham to sacrifice his kid and saying, just kidding, at the last moment. It was just a prank, bro. Father almost sacrificed his son. Prank gone wrong. Hilarious. Liked and subscribed. Now, things get a little more complicated with history and politics, because obviously a lot of things that happen in politics are the result of someone's deliberate plan. Whether or not you believe in 9/11 conspiracy theories, I think we all agree that someone decided to fly planes into those buildings, or holograms, or whatever it is you people think happened. Russia invaded Ukraine, presumably because Vlad Putin made a plan. Not a good plan, clearly, but technically some kind of plan. And the invasion of Ukraine is typical of the way actual plans tend to play out. One, it's a plan of a single faction, not of some unitary global elite. And two, the plan is marked by human frailty. It's haphazard, it's improvisational, it unfolds in ways the planners didn't anticipate. This is not how conspiracists understand plans. In his best-selling crackpot ravings, Behold a Pale Horse, conspiracist William Cooper describes his intentionalist view of history. Quote, "A grand game of chess is being played on a level that we can barely imagine, and we are the pawns." He then absurdly suggests that before continuing the book, the reader should play, quote, "at least 2 complete games of chess. You must learn the rules they play by." And yes, they is in all caps. Conspiracists are incapable of any other typographical style. Conspiracists think that if political power seems divided and incompetent, that's just because we're stuck in the dream world at the bottom of the pyramid, unaware of the evil chess demons secretly controlling everything. Listen to how 18th century conspiracist Augustin Barruel described the secret causes of the revolution. Quote, "Even the most horrid deeds perpetrated during the French Revolution, everything was foreseen and resolved on, was combined and premeditated. They were the offspring of deep-thought villainy, since they had been prepared and were produced by men who alone held the clue of those plots and conspiracies, lurking in the secret meetings where they had been conceived." This is not how things actually happened, though, Augustin. An event like the French Revolution is too complicated to be the result of a perfectly executed master plan. But just like creationists, conspiracists often fail to even understand the alternative to intelligent design. Conspiracist Gary Allen writes, "There are really only 2 theories of history. Either things happen by accident and neither planned nor caused by anybody, or they happen because they are planned and somebody causes them to happen." This is a false dichotomy. We don't have to choose between the conspiracist view of history as a masterful game of chess and the straw man alternative that everything happens by accident for no reason. That's not what mainstream historians are saying. They don't think the French Revolution was an accident, they just think the causes are complex. From the Enlightenment to inherent tensions of the estate system to harvest failures in the 1780s. And yes, obviously various people involved in the revolution made plans, but none of those people were masterminds secretly controlling every twist and turn. Which, if you put on your Sherlock Holmes hat, you should probably be able to deduce from the fact that most of them were guillotined. Masterful gambit, citizens. Intentionalism especially runs rampant in the way people talk about the economy, a topic where most people are a little conspiracist. Why did the price of eggs go up? It must be because the president turned up the big red inflation dial on his desk. Not that the president has no control over the economy. He can appoint the Federal Reserve Chair, he can propose taxes, tariffs, wars, that sort of thing. But a lot of times, blaming the president for the price of gas and eggs makes about as much sense as sacrificing the king because the river flooded. It feels good to blame someone, but in reality, there's not a single person on this earth who can precisely predict, much less control, the economy. And that's sort of creepy, right? Like the whole world revolves around money, but money is this weird abstraction you have to do math to understand. Most people aren't up for that, so we talk about the economy like it's an angry volcano god. Conspiracists really love to literalize the invisible hand. William Cooper claims that for the secret elites, it is as easy to predict and control the trend of an economy as to predict and control the trajectory of a projectile. The economy has been transformed into a guided missile on target. So who is launching this missile? Whose hand is the invisible hand? Well, conspiracists usually say that it's the international banking cabal, or the Rothschild-controlled central banks, or a bunch of other words that basically mean Jews. Again, more on that later. To actually understand the economy, you would have to use scientific, systematic thinking, not animistic, intentionalist conspiracy thinking. In a way, every systematic theorist, from Milton Friedman to Karl Marx, is closer to being correct than literally every conspiracy theorist. And yet, even the most systematic thinkers still rely on intentionalist metaphors to communicate their ideas. When Adam Smith wanted to describe how the preference for doing business at home leads merchants pursuing their self-interest to also unintentionally promote the good of their country, he said, "They're led by an invisible hand." When Karl Marx wanted to describe the extraction of surplus value from the working class, he said, "Capital is dead labor that acts like a vampire. It comes to life when it drinks living labor, and the more living labor it drinks, the more it comes to life." An invisible hand that guides us. Vampires drinking blood. These are anthropomorphic metaphors that describe an unintentional pattern as if it were an intentional action. So why use these metaphors? Well, because this is how humans think. We make sense of the world by imagining it as a reflection of ourselves. We see the earth as a mother and the sun as a father. We imagine an economy with hands, capital with fangs, and the universe itself with a mind like our own but greater, which we call God. I don't think it's stupid to think this way. I just think it's human. Humans think humanishly. So some level of intentionalism is probably inevitable. We sort of can't help it. It's one reason why conspiracy explanations of events are so appealing, and it's compounded by a few other motives. Motive one is the denial of chaos. I'm sorry, I know we're like 3 subsections deep. Unlike better YouTubers, I have not succeeded at organizing this video into an internet-friendly numbered list. It's scary to become an adult and to realize that, in fact, your parents don't know what they're doing, and no one knows what they're doing. There really are no grown-ups, not in the way you thought when you were a kid. It's unnerving to think that no one is steering the ship. So even if the deep state puppeteers are evil, it's maybe reassuring to think that at least someone, somewhere is in control. Someone is daddy.
It's like daddy arrived and he's taking his belt off.
Motive 2 is the denial of collective action. Why would Augustin Barruel want to think that the French Revolution was an Illuminati master plan? Well, because he was a Catholic monarchist. So it was ideologically more convenient for him to think secret societies planned the revolution than to accept that it wasn't any sense of the people. It's like the American conservatives in the 1950s who could not imagine why anyone would choose to be a communist, so they assumed it must be water fluoridation and Manchurian brainwashing. Or like the conservatives today, who see every progressive social movement, from LGBT rights to Antifa to Black Lives Matter, as top-down plots perpetrated by Soros-funded crisis actors on behalf of the globo-homo woke agenda. Motive 3 is proportionality bias, the tendency to assume that major events must have major causes. The idea that a world historic disaster like the COVID-19 pandemic could be caused by something so trivial and accidental as a bat virus being transmitted to humans via pangolins or whatever, it feels narratively imbalanced. It's more satisfying to imagine that it all unfolded according to a master plan of a secret global conspiracy to control the human race with face masks, and arrows on the floor of the grocery store. Wake up, sheeple. Motive 4 is the need for someone to blame. This, I think, is the big one. Whose fault is it? Is a very important human question. The elites are the reason I get no women. I know this may sound crazy, but retaliation is an instinctive reaction to injury. When something goes wrong, we look for someone to punish, even if it's not really anyone's fault. When a storm destroyed his bridge, the Persian king Xerxes supposedly ordered his men to whip the sea as punishment, according to Herodotus, so probably that didn't happen. You can't trust what a Greek says about Persians, I'm always saying that, but there's also real examples. During the Black Death, Jews were falsely blamed for poisoning wells and were massacred in pogroms across Europe. In 2020, Trump called COVID the China virus, using a similar kind of scapegoat logic to direct populist rage at foreigners, which is the entire thing he does. It's all he does. At the height of the pandemic, millions of people viewed the Plandemic trilogy of conspiracy documentaries, which falsely claimed the virus was deliberately engineered as part of a global conspiracy to take our freedoms. Plandemic provided scapegoats by making cartoonish villains out of everyone from Anthony Fauci to Bill Gates to the WHO, WEF, CDC, CCP, John D. Rockefeller, Big Pharma global communist agenda. And it's not that no one deserves any blame for the way the pandemic was handled. The 10 richest men in the world doubled their wealth in the same 2 years that millions of people slid into poverty. I think that's worth being angry about. But the conspiracist tendency is not to blame opportunists taking advantage of unjust systems and perverse incentives, and it's certainly not to blame the systems and incentives themselves. No, conspiracists demand blood. So they seek out secret covens of witches and reptiles and Satanists whom they imagine are motivated by pure ontological evil. Speaking of which, conspiracist principle 2, dualism. Dualism is the idea that society, and maybe even reality itself, is a struggle of good against evil, light against dark.
There's a battle being fought over our heads for world dominance. A battle between good and evil.
Either you are with us, or you are with the terrorists.
I'll quote another Marjorie tweet because she thinks with the same subtlety that she does pull-ups. Quote, "We are in a battle between good and evil. The Democrats are the party of pedophiles, murdering the innocent unborn, etc., etc. The Democrat Party is flat out evil, and yesterday they tried to murder President Trump." Imagine the Democrats attempting something as proactive as an assassination. Not really their MO, is it? Dualism is a view of human behavior devoid of moral ambiguity, where people do bad things not because of ignorance or a misbegotten sense of righteousness, but because they have consciously sworn allegiance to the forces of evil. And it must be a great confidence boost to people who think this way, to know that because they haven't sworn allegiance to evil, they must be on the side of righteousness in everything they do. Sometimes people call this Manichaean thinking, in reference to the religion founded by the ancient prophet Mani, who taught that there is not one God, but two opposing powers, the Father of greatness versus the Prince of darkness. But I feel like calling it Manichaean evades the fact that most people who think this way are, well, followers of more popular religions, so I'm calling it dualism. Now I'll just say it. Dualism is wrong. The world is not a battle between light and dark. Light and dark are complementary and codependent, and I know that's true because it was revealed to me by the Archangel Metatron in a mystical vision I had after consuming some sacred plant medicine from the Mother Earth. Checkmate, Manichaeans! Sometimes the best way to test an idea is to look at the other things it leads people to believe. So let's look at some dualist thinking in action. In May 2024, Buckingham Palace unveiled Jonathan Yeo's portrait of King Charles III, which depicts the monarch against a red background evoking like a sea of blood and fire. Normal people agreed that this was funny. But conspiracists flocked to social media to speculate that Kate Middleton was dead and the portrait was painted with her blood, and that vertically mirroring the painting along its right edge reveals the face of Satan Prince of Darkness. Conspiracist Naomi Wolf quote, "These Satanists just don't sleep." My God. It was really bad for your skin to not sleep. That's probably why they need the adrenochrome. So look, I agree that the king is bad. We're on the same page there. But he's not bad because he's a secret Satan worshiper who hides demonic images in oil paintings. No, the king is bad because, prepare yourself Brits, yank take incoming, because monarchy is bad. But conspiracists do not understand that problems can arise from a form of government itself. For conspiracists, the problem is never the structure of power, but rather that the people currently in power just so happen to be evil Satanists. Listen to how QAnon propaganda film Q, The Plan to Save the World, directed by Joe M., describes the root of all societal problems.
We were taught that capitalism was the cause of a massive rich-poor divide and the reason for poverty. Others were taught that communism, the system of equal wealth across all people, was really to blame for the mess. But you see, folks, it is none of these things. What you must learn is that it was the criminals all along. What you must learn is that it has always been them, a colossal global criminal class.
Joe M. argues that inequality, crime, and war are not the result of any particular political order, but are the result of satanic criminals taking over government, industry, media, and banking and deliberately oppressing us, the good people, by attacking the family, poisoning our food, and murdering our beautiful dead wife JFK. Rest in peace, sweet angel.
The world is currently experiencing a dramatic covert war of biblical proportions. Literally the fight for Earth between the forces of good and evil.
The apocalyptic tone conceals a kind of optimism. If we could just purge the deep state, then all the world's problems would be solved. No more war, no more poverty, no more crime, because all of that is the deliberate plan of the ontologically evil cabal and their mainstream media shills.
We realized that the problem was never capitalism or socialism, Democrat or Republican, black or white, Muslim or Christian. We know it was just very powerful criminals who had too much power.
It can be tempting to think that conspiracists are confused socialists, since they're seemingly so bothered by rich elites. But they're not socialists. They think both capitalists and socialists are bad because they're all puppets of the real satanic power behind the throne. Some conspiracy theories, like QAnon, are very explicit that the enemy is literally Satan. But conspiracist dualism can also be a little more subtle than the least subtle it is possible to be. John Bircher-style anti-communist conspiracy theories of the last century usually didn't mention Satan specifically, but the way they told it, communism may as well have been the devil. When conspiracists like Alex Jones or his major influence Gary Allen rant about communism, they're not talking about actual communist theory or practice. Like, here's how Gary Allen defines communism. And yes, the definition is in all caps. Quote, "An international conspiratorial drive for power on the part of men in high places willing to use any means to bring about their desired aim. Global conquest." He argues that Karl Marx was merely a patsy, a pamphleteer and hired goon of the Illuminati communist bankers, that no one in power ever sincerely believed that communism is good, because he defines communism as a plan to consciously do evil. Quote, "The issue, very simply, is the enslavement of you and your children." The idea of satanic elites was taken to its extreme by New Age conspiracist David Icke, who popularized the theory that the secret rulers of the world are literally inhuman, that they're shape-shifting, blood-drinking, extraterrestrial reptiles who are using a metaphysical construct called the Saturn Moon Matrix to imprison humanity in a simulation with bad vibes. Maybe ease up on the red pills there, buddy. I think you've had enough. We need red pill Narcan stat. We're losing him. To illustrate why dualism is wrong, let's use MK Ultra as an example. Why did MK Ultra happen? Did the CIA experiment with mind control because they were Satanists who delight in doing evil? No, that's not how things happen. In all of human history, almost nothing has happened because of Satanists. The CIA wanted to develop mind control because they were good American patriots with a paranoid conspiratorial streak of their own. They saw videos of American prisoners of war in Korea declaring allegiance to communism. And instead of concluding that this was the result of torture or genuine disillusionment with what America was doing in Korea, the CIA feared that the communists had developed mind control, and they would not allow a mind control gap. So they didn't think they were doing evil. They thought of themselves as protecting the free world against an existential threat. And when those are the stakes, the ends justify the means. And that is how you end up seated in front of a one-way mirror watching prostitutes poison people with LSD. If you're a Fed. I just do it for fun. This is not to deny there was an element of sadism involved in MKUltra. In fact, I'm sure there was.
This man worked on some of these programs. He would write of his work, "It was fun, fun, fun." From brothels, an agent says, "We learned a lot about human nature in the bedroom."
But sadism usually finds a justification for itself. Conspiracists have never heard the saying that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. The final element of conspiracist dualism is what's called millenarianism, the idea that the battle between good and evil is reaching an imminent climax, resulting in a messianic age.
Raging around us is the final phase of a vast global shadow war, not between nations, but between the forces of good and the most unimaginable of evils.
For QAnon, the Day of Judgment was the storm, and it's not an exaggeration to say that many viewed, and at time of filming still view, Trump as the Messiah.
I have grown to fully trust Don, master of all masters.
Conspiracists of every era usually believe that total ruin or total transformation is at hand. The survival of the free world depends on the sheeple waking up. The truth will shake the earth to its foundations. Alex Jones has been saying for 25 years that tyranny is imminent. One world government, nuclear apocalypse, World War III, Civil War alert. The globalists are always just about to make that final move. Any day now. It's why you need to stay tuned into InfoWars for tomorrow's news today. And while you're here, please buy our Super Male Vitality Serum to purify your precious bodily fluids and help us pay our defamation damages.
But researchers say some of Jones's supplements could be sperm killing.
Conspiracist Principle 3, Symbolism. So to show you what I mean by symbolism, I'm just going to list some things I have seen cited as evidence of a global satanic conspiracy. Corporate logos that look like the planet Saturn, the Monster energy drink symbol, the statue of Shiva at CERN, subliminal sexual imagery in Disney movies, red shoes, celebrities holding pizza boxes, celebrities making hand signs, hidden in plain sight, Tom Hanks saluting the Baphomet in Forrest Gump. Sir, I would like to introduce you to the Congressional Medal of Honor. U.S. Congressional Medal of Honor, killing for Lucifer. Tom Hanks is another Satanist. And pedo. And of course, the goddamn reptiles.
Isn't it weird that the Vatican's audience hall is full of references to reptilians?
If Satanists took over the Vatican, would you notice? Therefore, they openly showcase their symbolism. Therefore, they were sloppy. If you fold a dollar bill the right way and place it side by side, it reveals a reptilian face with sharp teeth. And beneath those teeth, Satan. There's a whole genre of conspiracy theories based on symbolism and US currency. The Eye of Providence and the dollar bill is the most famous, but the Kansas hole goes deeper than that. $5 bill shows the Twin Towers. $10 bill shows after the planes collided. $20 bill shows the buildings collapsing. $50 bill shows the dust and the smoke. $100 bill shows a new beginning. The money is all shaped like an airplane. Yes, all money is shaped like an airplane if you fold it in the shape of an airplane. What a coincidence. Move along, nothing to see here. But I want my dollar back. Is this what they mean by follow the money? Okay, so corporate logos, hand signs in music videos, images in Hollywood movies, occult symbols on currency. What kind of evidence is this? It's a style of conspiracism made explicit by one of Q's recurring slogans. Symbolism will be their downfall. The idea is you can divine the existence and nature of a conspiracy by learning to read the symbolic language of the elite. QAnon formalized this decoding activity through Q drops or breadcrumbs, cryptic messages that followers had to bake or decipher.
Like an army of digital autists, we connect the dots.
It's a gamification of political speculation that's been compared to an ARG. It's exciting to discover secrets, uncover plots, solve puzzles, decrypt codes, connect the dots, divine the future. It's a discourse that's not even pseudo-intellectual because it's not even trying to appear rational. It's most closely related to occult divinatory practices like astrology or tarot reading. I call it mediamancy. If cartomancy is divination by reading cards, and necromancy is divination by talking to dead people, then mediamancy is divination by interpreting satanic Illuminati symbols in Taylor Swift music videos. Conspiracist symbolism views the media, the iconography of government, industry, and religion, even the events of history itself, as so many tea leaves in which you can divine the true nature of reality and predict the wicked schemes of the elite. Oh my god, the Statue of Liberty is actually Lucifer. Oh my god, the One World Trade Center looks like a syringe. Vaxxed. Conspiracists usually believe that the news is fake, that every official source of information is propaganda for the cabal, and yet it's also full of cryptic hints and symbols which we can decode and piece together to reveal the hidden truth. Now, a rational person might ask, what do the elites gain by this? Why would they place these symbols everywhere for us to find? Well, to mock us. They're doing it out in the open. Normalizing Satanism is a stage, a milestone on the road to the New World Order. It is a method of satanic inversion, of turning white into black and good into evil. Casual reminder that Taylor Swift is literally normalizing Satanism. So the idea is that the elites are evil occultists, so they put evil occult symbols everywhere because that's what evil occultists do. I don't think treating this like a rational argument will get us anywhere, so let's instead try to make sense of it by comparison with astrology. Now, I need to clarify my view of astrology because by comparing it to conspiracism, it might sound like I have a negative opinion of astrology. So I need to tread carefully here, or I'll be forever exiled from the LGBT community. More so, I think astrology has its place, so long as astrology knows its place. In The Essential Guide to Practical Astrology, April Elliott Kent writes, "Astrology is a language. It's the sky's way of speaking to us." Taken literally, this is intentionalism. The sky does not speak any more than volcanoes get angry. But taken metaphorically, it could be true that contemplating planetary cycles causes me to realize something about my own emotions. Like, for example, that I have bipolar disorder, if that wasn't obvious from, look around us. In my opinion, when astrologers are asked to explain themselves, they should say something like this. Astrology is a centuries-old tradition of storytelling that uses a symbolic language based around the movement of the planets to provide meaning and guidance to people's lives. All human thinking is to some extent projection. Like, what is a constellation? It's connecting the dots in the most literal sense. The constellation Aries is a ram, but is the ram in the sky, or is the ram in our minds? It doesn't even really look like a ram to me, but it wasn't named by me, it was named by ancient people who spent a lot more time around sheep. Human brains search for patterns. It's called apophenia, the tendency to perceive meaningful connections between unrelated things. It's why we look at clouds and see animals. It's why we look at Disney's The Little Mermaid and see the phallus of the father.
I set certain rules, and I expect those rules to be obeyed.
And when Dad gets home, you know what he says? You've been a bad girl. You've been a bad little girl and you're getting a vigorous spanking right now.
It's Daddy, you shithead. Where's my bourbon?
Our brains default to apophenia whenever we have no better methods of analysis. You see this a lot on low information investing forums like Wall Street Bets. Low information investing. So gambling. On gambling forums, gaps in financial literacy are spontaneously filled by Stone Age superstition. The Nvidia line made a shape and then go up. The Tesla line made a similar shape. Maybe it go up. Guys, at this point, just consult the entrails of beasts like honest barbarians. Stock-obsessed Gen Z are using astrology and tarot to invest. My god, the S&P 500 is in retrograde. Well, by the retrograde. Not only do we recognize patterns where there aren't any, but also our preconceived biases influence the type of patterns that we recognize. It's like people who go looking for God tend to find the God they're looking for. The Virgin Mary tends to appear on grilled cheese sandwiches in Miami, while the name of Allah tends to appear on melons in Indonesia. And conspiracists who think the world is ruled by a satanic cabal tend to find demonic symbols basically everywhere.
Sam Smith and The Weeknd with some of the most satanic performances ever. Lizzo with a literal 6 on her head. Doja Cat and all these other artists. Do you guys get it yet?
An especially powerful type of apophenia is called face pareidolia, the tendency to see faces in inanimate objects. Almost any symmetrical object with 2 dots over a line we perceive as a face. It's why emojis and emoticons can convey facial expressions with such little information. And a guaranteed way to create a symmetrical image is to mirror literally any picture along a vertical line. To choose a random example, if we were to take the portrait of King Charles, conspiracism is to history and media analysis as astrology is to astronomy. Pre-modern thinking, postmodern politics. And this is a little awkward for Christian conspiracy theorists because they're basically practicing a form of occult divination. But that cognitive dissonance is easily managed by projecting their obsession with the occult onto the elite. It's because the elites are obsessed with the occult that everywhere I look, I see occult symbols.
The elite, again, the so-called establishment kings, are obsessed with the occult.
Conspiracists hate the occult the way a man posts rants about the evils of pornography 20 seconds after zipping up his pants. The way the Ku Klux Klan hated Catholicism while parading around in Spanish Catholic capirote hoods. Sometimes haters are fans in denial. So why does occult symbolism have so many fans? Well, like intentionalism, I think irrational symbolic thinking is inherently human and will never go away. Academic history and political science will never fully replace conspiracism for the same reasons that astronomy will never completely replace astrology. Because the scientific worldview cannot meet all human needs. Science tells us how things happen, but it doesn't tell us why things happen in a certain humanistic sense. We rely on symbolism, on mythology, to inscribe the world with meaning. And science destroys that mythology. Conspiracism is like spirituality in that it re-enchants the world, it re-mythologizes. It denies the meaninglessness of random chaos on one hand and the determinism of scientific laws on the other. Divination survives and thrives in the age of science because there's important questions that scientific rationality cannot answer. Questions like, how do I make sense of grief or trauma? Science doesn't answer questions like that, so we all practice some form of witchcraft, whether it's prayer, astrology. I mean, I believe in psychoanalysis.
There has to be a point at which Dad comes home.
It's like Daddy arrived and he's taking his belt off, you know?
When something horrible like 9/11 happens, we want to know why, not just in a structural engineering sense. We want it to mean something. It's not why in the sense of physical causation, it's why in the sense of, my God, why have you forsaken me? What is the meaning of this? 15 years ago, I came across this conspiracist breakdown of the occult numerology of 9/11. It uses numerology, tarot, and Kabbalah to discover the esoteric meaning of 9/11. Quote, a mass sacrifice ritual invoking destruction of the divine union to provoke a response of blind violence based in fear. There's a kind of proportionality bias here too. Meaningful events should have meaningful causes. Maybe this 9/11 ritual meme brought some kind of comfort to the person who made it. And is that so wrong? If it's okay to use astrology to make sense of personal trauma, then is it really so bad to use conspiracist mediamancy to make sense of political trauma? Well, yes. Yes, it is. Why? Divination has its place as long as divination knows its place. And conspiracist divination never knows its place. It's virtually always in conflict with more rational ways of understanding politics, and for that reason, it's a menace to democracy. A voter who's engaging with politics by searching for reptilian symbols in public architecture is not fact-checking claims about immigrants eating pets, much less developing informed opinions about tariffs. And worse, the confirmation bias and unfalsifiability of symbolic interpretation means that every prejudice is amplified to extremes and immunized against debunking. If conspiracists are homophobic, they'll divine symbolic evidence of a gay conspiracy. If they're anti-Semitic, they'll divine symbolic evidence of a Jewish conspiracy. And if they're 46% of Trump voters in 2016, they'll conclude on the basis of symbolism in artwork owned by Tony Podesta and references to hot dogs in Hillary Clinton's emails that Democratic politicians are enacting satanic pedo rituals in the basement of a pizza parlor. What is it about rituals, in particular, that is so endlessly fascinating to conspiracists? 9/11 is a ritual. Celebrities in drag is a ritual. Celebrities out of drag is a ritual. The conspiracy theory is never just that the elites are abusing children, it's always specifically ritual abuse, or ritual murder. So what is so important about rituals? I want to go down that rabbit hole, but it's definitely going to get me demonetized, so I'd like to take a moment to thank this video's sponsors: the Clinton Foundation, the Bilderberg Group, Bohemian Club, the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, the Council on Foreign Relations, World Bank, the Trilateral Commission, the Jesuit Order, the Chinese Communist Party, the Temple of Satan, the Rothschild Estate, Galactic Emperor Xenu, and Curiosity Stream. Just kidding. I'll be lying in the cold dead ground before I take a goddamn cent from Curiosity Stream. I have a little thing called integrity. Part 4. The Ritual. Dark Mother, Cold Mother, Cruel Mother. What is the password? No. I mean, the Wi-Fi password. I can't get any signal out here, which is why I wish we'd do this in the city, so I don't have to drive out to New Jersey in the middle of the night every time we have a goddamn orgy. So there's this fixation among conspiracists on the real and imagined rituals of the elite. For example, the transvestigation conspiracy theory alleges that virtually every celebrity is secretly transgender due to some kind of elite Luciferian initiation ritual, as evidenced by, for example, this diagram of World War II General Douglas MacArthur's voluptuous female breasts. We're through the looking glass here, people. To understand this obsession, we need to ask, what is the purpose of ritual? Well, ritual binds communities together, and like symbolism, ritual creates meaning and clarifies social status. Coronations, inaugurations, weddings, the reading of a judicial verdict, all of these are rituals that authorize certain relationships of power. So it makes sense that if there were secret powers behind the throne, then those powers would have secret rituals. And conspiracists often try to demonstrate the existence of the secret powers by exposing the secret rituals. In the late 90s, there was a young conspiracy theorist who hosted a local radio show in Austin, Texas. His name was Alex Jones. One of his first moments in the national spotlight was his Y2K video, Dark Secrets, Inside Bohemian Grove. I have a copy right here on VHS. Let's watch it now.
Hello, I'm Alex Jones, and I'm a radio and television host based in Austin, Texas. And for many years, I've been exposing the criminal activities of the global elite, also known as the New World Order.
In this video, Alex infiltrates the Bohemian Club, which is essentially a fraternity for rich middle-aged men who meet yearly at a campground north of San Francisco to perform a ceremony called the Cremation of Care, in which an effigy representing the dull cares of daily life is burnt at an altar beneath a giant statue of an owl. Participants in this chuggy frat boy pageant have included Presidents Bush Jr. and Sr., Reagan, Eisenhower, Hoover, and Richard Nixon, who once referred to the Cremation of Care as, quote, the most faggy goddamned thing you could ever imagine. Alex insists we should all be horrified by the Cremation of Care, which he describes as an ancient
Canaanite, Luciferian, Babylon mystery religion ceremony.
The centerpiece of the documentary is the secret footage Alex took of the ceremony, which is simply embarrassing for everyone involved.
all care, and all the winds make merry with thy dust. Hail, fellowship's eternal flame. Once again, midsummer sets us free.
See, this is why I don't hang out with rich people. They're not cool. Stop making them look cool, Alex. The documentary ends with Alex standing outside the Texas Capitol building with a megaphone, screaming about how then-Governor George Bush is a Luciferian occultist.
This is how George Bush dresses, right here when he's in the Bohemian Grove. He is nothing but a Luciferian twit. A Luciferian twit, Bush. You may think you can feed on the human population. We say no to you.
Okay, this is a little bit charming. I admit I kind of enjoy Alex Jones' early work, before he went mainstream. The whole point of the Bohemian Grove video is Alex seems to think that this mock ritual sacrifice is something that should shock us to the core. He also absurdly implies that real child sacrifices take place at Bohemian Grove, despite the fact that he has the whole thing on video, and clearly, no children are sacrificed.
Mock human sacrifices, they claim, just shocks the very foundations of what Americans believe their leaders to be.
It's like when conspiracists cite Marina Abramovich performance art or the Rothschild surrealist ball as evidence of elite satanic cannibalism, because one time someone ate a cake shaped like a person. Did you ever eat a gingerbread man? Are you a cannibal? Don't be stupid.
You're a monster!
Ancient Romans accused Christians of cannibalism because they talk of eating and drinking their god. Christians, of all people, should understand the concept of a symbolic human sacrifice. Isn't that like the entire basis of your religion? What exactly is so horrifying about a bunch of old men getting drunk in the woods and doing fruity rituals? We do still have freedom of religion in this country, which means you're allowed to do whatever fruity rituals you want. I think there is a grain of truth, though, in conspiracist paranoia about secret societies, like the Bohemian Club, or the Bilderberg Group, or maybe early in American history, the Freemasons. But it has nothing to do with rituals. The grain of truth is that there is something undemocratic about a bunch of men with a disproportionate grip on power gathering behind closed doors. If that's your argument, then I agree. But that's not what conspiracists are saying. They're not saying that secret societies are undemocratic. They're saying that secret societies are satanic. And that's why they're fixated on the rituals. They think the rituals are satanic, and therefore they suspect that child sacrifice is involved. Okay, so we've finally arrived at satanic ritual baby killing. The moment you've all been waiting for. Satanic ritual baby killing is a classic conspiracist trope with a long and ugly history. In the Middle Ages, ritual child murder was an accusation made in witch trials and in anti-Jewish blood libel. In the US, one of the best-selling books of the 1830s was an anti-Catholic hoax called Awful Disclosures of Maria Monk, which claimed that so-called black nuns were forcing initiates to have debauched sex with local priests, and that the resulting babies were baptized, strangled, and buried in secret tombs beneath the convent. This was part of a nativist backlash against immigrants from Ireland and Germany, along with a bunch of other conspiracy theories about a papist plot to destroy America through mass migration, secretly subsidized by the Catholic powers of Europe. People in this country truly never learn. Meanwhile, in the Catholic powers of Europe, a panic occurred in the 1880s when a series of books exposed a secret Luciferian cult within Freemasonry that worshipped Baphomet, held satanic orgies, and was plotting to destroy the papacy. This was all revealed to be a hoax by the writer Leo Taxil in 1897. Not that that stops conspiracists from treating it as fact to this day. Maybe the decline in Freemasonry is the reason there's a male loneliness epidemic. Stop posting incel shit online and join your local Masonic lodge.
Devil worship, exposing Satan's underground.
In the 1980s, this is getting old fast, there was a witch hunt known as the Satanic Panic.
You have to give a blood sacrifice to Satan.
An obsessive fascination with sex and drugs, and yes, heavy metal rock and roll. The other face of adult Satanism is violent and fiendish, centered on sexual ritual and torture, frequently descending into the vilest crime of all, sexual abuse of children.
Dungeons and Dragons. Some claim it's a simple, harmless game.
It's all imagination.
Is it?
The Satanic Panic began in Canada with the publication of Michelle Remembers, a supposedly non-fiction memoir recounting Catholic psychiatrist Lawrence Pastor's hypnotherapy sessions with his patient-turned-wife Michelle Smith. In a hypnotic trance, Michelle allegedly recovered repressed memories of being surrendered by her mother at the age of 5 to a satanic cult, whose rituals included demonic orgies, Bible defecation, forced cannibalism, serpent fornication, kitten sacrifice, baby crucifixion. This apparently very convincing testimony was promoted by Oprah and spread worldwide, with 12,000 accusations of satanic ritual abuse, leading to dozens of convictions and years of jail time for innocent daycare workers. Certain American police officers even appointed themselves leaders of the Grand Inquisition, resulting in the certified VHS classic Law Enforcement Guide to Satanic Cults. Let's watch it now.
There's two different communities that use this park. One is the pagan or occultic community, and the other community is, of course, the homosexual community. Interestingly enough, they go hand in hand.
All law enforcement officers should be familiar with the different types of degeneracy.
This is the way occultists tell each other, hey, we're Satanists and we're partying.
More than 2 million American children each year are reported missing. The ceremonies involve rape and sexual assault, sodomy, animal and human sacrifices, and often the slaughter of unbaptized infants. Sex with demons is primary.
My favorite part of this video is where they just list a series of atrocities supposedly committed by Satanists, but there's this 80s synth funk in the background the entire time.
Sexual trafficking of children, corpse theft, pornography.
So with Pizzagate, QAnon, and the general satanic pedo cabal conspiracies, these same satanic ritual abuse accusations are directed not at witches, Jews, Freemasons, Catholics, or daycare workers, but at the elites. And because this is primarily a right-wing conspiracy theory, the elites in question are mainly Hollywood actors and liberal politicians. Now, we have to acknowledge another grain of truth here. The idea of elite sex criminals seems plausible to people, in part, because there are, in fact, numerous elite sex criminals. Goddamn Jeffrey Epstein gave a lot of credibility to this. However, there is a considerable gap between Jeffrey Epstein, the real live sex criminal, well, the real dead sex criminal, and the conspiracist fantasy of the satanic pedo cabal. For one thing, there's no evidence that Epstein was a Satanist. And according to the victims, if you actually care what the victims have to say, he was, if anything, unceremonious. So why then did he commit his crimes, if not for the sake of evil occultic rituals? Well, I think it's safe to infer he was basically a high libido sociopath with enough power to get away with it. And it also seems like beautiful girls were a kind of status symbol to him, and a currency he could use to influence other powerful men. You know what the real conspiracy is?
Patriarchy, fuckface!
When you strip away the fantasy of satanic rituals, what Jeffrey Epstein actually did is he treated women and girls like commodities. And I think it's emotionally challenging for people to confront that, because treating women and girls like commodities is banal. It's ordinary. Most men do it to some extent, and not because men are inherently evil, but because society empowers them to do it.
Hey, when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the I can do anything.
And because this is the internet, I need to clarify that I don't hate men. I'm not trying to castrate anyone. I'm not trying to cuckold anyone. I'm not trying to strap on a high-heeled boot and step on anyone's d and or balls. I'm just asking questions. Why didn't Trump's grab him by the pussy boast end his political career in 2016? Well, because men say things like that all the time. Male sexual domination is normal. But Epstein crossed a line. He took it too far. And there's a need to make that line as sharp as possible, to distance criminal sexual domination from normal sexual domination. And that is one function of the satanic ritual abuse conspiracy. It denies the banality of sexual violence by making sexual violence exotic. Conspiracists project sexual violence outside themselves, outside their own families, communities, and churches, by imagining it as this bizarre, incomprehensible evil practiced by spiritually deviant elites with motives that resemble nothing in ordinary human psychology. And that way, we never have to confront the hypocrisy of our own values. That we idealize alpha male sexual dominance, but we're horrified when powerful men sexually dominate. We make a fetish out of youthful beauty, but we're horrified when someone is sexually attracted to the exact quality we've all been collectively fetishizing. Like we haven't all heard ordinary men say that women hit the wall at 25. I don't need to show the OkCupid data, do I? Like it isn't commonplace to tell teenage girls to watch how they dress because it's distracting to their teachers and it makes their male relatives uncomfortable. No, we don't need to deal with any of that because the problem is simply Satanists. This kind of distancing sensationalism really reached its peak with the conspiracy theory known as Frazzle Drip. And if you haven't heard of this, I'm so excited that I get to be the one to tell you. Frazzle Drip, or frazzled.rip, is the name of a folkloric file supposedly discovered on the laptop of former US Representative Anthony Weiner, which, according to internet rumor, contains a snuff film so depraved it made hardened NYPD detectives cry like little bitches before committing suicide. The video supposedly shows Hillary Clinton and her staffer Huma Abedin enacting a satanic ritual sacrifice in which they rip a little girl's face off of her face and take turns wearing the face as a mask while committing sadistic sex acts and drinking the adrenalized blood of this now faceless child. Okay, and what happens next? Does Squidward unalive himself? Is a clown going to murder me in the bath if I don't share this with my top 8 MySpace friends by midnight? Chad, I need you to understand that this low-quality creepypasta is not some obscure piece of fringe QAnon lore. The Frazzle Drip rumor emerged in 2018, but to this day, people post about it on conspiracy Twitter and conspiracy Reddit on like a weekly basis. There's a whole extended lore about how wearing a child's face as a mask is a common adrenochrome harvesting method, and that the media is full of symbolism alluding to the practice. For example, Lady Gaga's outfit at the 2009 VMAs. Guys, if you see a red lace dress and your first thought is, that looks like a child who's been skinned alive, the problem is within you. See also the Basquiat painting on a hoodie worn by Ellen DeGeneres and Jay-Z, and Wilson the volleyball from the movie Castaway. This last example is cited by conspiracists as evidence that beloved actor Tom Hanks is in fact a sodomistic pedovore who routinely gluts himself on the adrenochrome-rich blood of slaughtered children. So anyone who's even slightly tethered to reality can tell this isn't true. But I, as a close personal friend of Hillary, am in a unique position to prove it isn't true. Because I have seen the real Frazzle Drip. I have it right here on VHS. Let's watch it now.
Place the mask into position as before.
Sorry,
and get ready
wrong
for
tape.
a real treat. The first time you position the mask
Sometimes
on
I
your
get
face,
the labels on
you will
my
likely want to
VHS
use a
tapes
mirror
mixed up.
to help you align it properly. When positioning the mask, the 4 facial contact areas on the mask.
It's probably this one. Oh yeah, this is it. Mother of darkness, embrace me. Take a fucking sip, babes. I love the smell of adrenochrome in the morning. Always Satanis. Hail Moloch. Oh fuck, the arm came off. Hillary, no! I can't believe the World Economic Forum is paying me to do this. So at a certain point, and we have reached that point, conspiracy theory becomes too dignified a term for what is essentially a perverted form of morbid entertainment. I have a good eye for perversion, because I am a pervert. I know how perverts think, so you can trust me when I say conspiracists are perverts. People who are not perverts do not spend this much time thinking about debauched satanic sex crimes. Now, conspiracists will be like, how dare you? We are concerned citizens who are saving children and doing our own research. No, you're not. No, you're not. Posting about celebrity face harvesting rituals is not research, and it's not saving children, and I'm simply not going to allow you to get away with pretending that it is. I think this whole moral crusade is largely an excuse for you to spend a lot of time talking and thinking about Sadian sexual depravity. There's an element of lust in every witch hunt. In the 1486 witch hunting manual Malleus Maleficarum, there's a kind of horny obsession with women f***ing demons.
Incubus, a male demonic force that copulates with human females.
Witch trials often involved the invasive inspection of women's bodies for so-called witches' marks. There's a scene in the Law Enforcement Guide to Satanic Cults where you just have to see it to believe it.
You'll note on our model that there's oftentimes a cut that goes from behind the ear all the way down to the throat. Another area that's obvious in these kinds of ritualistic carvings would be the pentagram or the inverted pentagram on the right and the left side of the upper chest.
It is our sacred obligation to uproot the sexual deviancy that is corrupting our children and putrefying our communities. Now, look over here at our bikini model, whose pert, nubile body we're going to inspect for marks of the devil.
Another area we'll want to note is the foot area.
These are not serious people. Richard Hofstadter said that anti-Catholicism has always been the pornography of the Puritan.
Pornography.
He was talking about awful disclosures and those allegations about fornicating nuns murdering babies. 19th century conspiracists developed a, quote, immense lore about libertine priests, the confessional as an opportunity for seduction, licentious convents and monasteries. Today, satanic panics are the pornography of the Puritan. Satan is a symbol of temptation, and whatever the Puritan represses in himself, he attributes to the Satanist. Sex, drugs, hedonism, violence, luxury, the eyes wide shut style conspiracy of forbidden temptations.
Well, I've had a very interesting look around.
The philosopher Sartre noticed something similar in his essay on anti-Semitism. He says, I knew a Protestant in whom sexual desire took the form of indignation.
That's disgusting. Naked pics online? Where? Where did he post those?
The sight of women in bathing suits aroused him to a fury. He willingly encouraged that fury and passed his time at swimming pools.
Look at that disgusting display. Yes, sir.
The anti-Semite is like that. His behavior reflects a curiosity fascinated by evil, but above all, I think, it represents a basic sadism. So what does that mean? What is the sadism he's talking about? Well, there's two types of sadism in a witch hunt. Sadism 1 is the curiosity fascinated by evil, this morbid pleasure in denial that we take in going down the rabbit hole of sick and twisted crimes, which we attribute to the witch.
Such a clever witch to twist the truth, to cloud the mind with unholy thoughts.
Sadism 2 is the pleasure of retribution, justice served, burning the witch. I think these same two types of sadism are the reason police shows like Law & Order SVU are so enjoyable.
In the criminal justice system, sexually based offenses are considered especially heinous.
The framing of a police procedural provides a legitimate context that gives us permission to indulge whatever morbid curiosity we may have about especially heinous sexually based offenses. That's sadism 1. And then, because those sexually based offenses are so especially heinous, we feel a sense of satisfaction when those hero cops bring down the hammer of the law on whatever creeper pervert of the week. Retribution, justice served. That's sadism 2.
I'll tell you what I think, pervert. You can't hide from me behind your fancy education. I smell you.
I think the same dynamic explains a type of cultural fixation on pedophilia. I mean, it's right there in the name of the show. It's called To Catch a Predator, not To Protect a Child. There are no children on that show. In To Catch a Predator, the media and the cops collaborate to essentially create a crime for the purpose of televising the punishment. It's entrapmentainment. And I'm not asking anyone to feel sorry for the predators they catch. I'm just trying to keep it real about the reason that this show exists. A lot of people obsess over real or imagined crimes against children, not out of sincere concern for victims, put her ass back in the cabinet, but simply because crimes against children provide a really good justification for retributive violence. It's why warmongering politicians often say the enemy is killing babies, because it's a crime that cries out for revenge, that warrants unlimited retaliation. In 2017, the first ever Q drop claimed that Hillary Clinton had been arrested and was being extradited. So from day one, QAnon was a retributive fantasy that appealed to Trump supporters who were beginning to wonder when the Donald was planning to fulfill his campaign promise to lock her up. And from there, it escalated into this idea of the storm, the public mass executions of politicians aligned with the cabal. So that's another function of the satanic ritual abuse conspiracy. It sanctions violence. And it sanctifies violence. It makes violence sacred, because violence against evil is good. And what could be more evil than satanic pedophiles who murder children and wear their faces like a mask? So, like To Catch a Predator, QAnon was, in many ways, a bunch of people standing around a gallows looking for a criminal to hang. Scapegoating, the need to blame and punish someone, is where the three principles of conspiracism come together. Intentionalism, because punishment needs a criminal. Dualism, because if the criminals are purely evil, we can rest assured our violence against them is purely righteous. And symbolism, because we need a method to discover criminals and reveal their purely evil nature.
This is how occultists talk to each other. This here is a psilocybin mushroom.
So satanic rituals are proof, both of guilt and of deliberate allegiance to the devil. Where does this desire for retaliation come from? Why does scapegoating happen? Well, one, it can be a response to an unintended disaster like COVID-19, where conspiracists blamed Bill Gates or the World Health Organization or the Chinese. Two, it can be a response to an actual crime, like 9/11, a crime against the American people. We couldn't retaliate against the hijackers, obviously, but from the moment the second plane hit the South Tower, it was collectively decided we were going to retaliate against someone. And Iraq and Afghanistan became the surrogate victims.
We will make no distinction between the terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbored them.
Three, scapegoating can be an act of projective guilt, where our own guilt or feeling of guilt is either forgiven or repressed by transferring guilt to the scapegoat. This is actually closest to the origin of the concept of scapegoating in Leviticus, where on the Day of Atonement, the high priest lays his hands on the head of a goat and confesses the sins of the Israelites. He then sends the goat out into the desert, symbolically transferring the sins away from the community. Conspiracists are usually not as self-aware about this as the Israelites. A month before Edgar Madison Welch, the Pizzagate shooter, barged into Comet Ping Pong with an AR-15, he'd severely injured a 13-year-old pedestrian in a car accident. On his drive to DC, he recorded a message to his own kids about his duty to protect children.
Protect people who can't protect themselves.
The 80s satanic panic began when Michelle Smith came to her psychiatrist Dr. Pazder with severe and persistent grief she was experiencing over a recent miscarriage. And it was only after Dr. Pazder encouraged her to free associate that she began recovering memories of satanic ritual baby killing.
Witches chant and babies burn. Mustn't talk. It will be my turn.
The 9/11 Truth Movement began before the towers even fell and attracted a variety of people for a variety of reasons. But it didn't peak until 2006, around the time American public opinion turned against the war in Iraq. There were no weapons of mass destruction, a sectarian civil war had broken out with no end in sight, and photos had been leaked of American soldiers running a torture prison at Abu Ghraib. So it was around 2006 that Americans began to tell the story of that war in the way we tell it still. The Bush administration lied about weapons of mass destruction and tricked us all into going to war. That's not entirely false, but it's not the whole truth either. Weapons of mass destruction were the pretext given, but the evidence they provided was not very convincing. The UN Security Council didn't buy it, France, in particular, didn't buy it and was very opposed to the war. And Americans spent the next several years calling the French cheese-eating surrender monkeys, I believe that was the phrase, and renaming French fries freedom fries. French's Mustard had to release a statement disavowing any association with the French Republic. The only thing French about French's Mustard is the name. Yeah, we can tell. So that's how popular Operation Iraqi Freedom was with Americans in 2003, when 72% of Americans supported the invasion and President Bush's approval rating went up 13 points. I think, at that particular moment, Americans would have been willing to go to war with almost any Middle Eastern country on almost any pretext.
Some say this country is just out looking for a fight. Well, after 9/11, man, I'd have to say that's right.
I was a teenager at the time, but I'll never forget the things I heard adults openly saying on a regular basis. Turn the Middle East to glass. It's too bad we didn't win the Crusades. Who the fuck is we? Christendom? My point is that the Bush administration didn't sell us anything we didn't want to buy. And it took a few years for buyer's remorse to set in. Only then did we need a scapegoat on whom to pin our guilt for the war. And we knew, emotionally, that displaced revenge for 9/11, aka the War on Terror, was the deeper motivation. So blaming Bush for lying about WMDs was not enough. We needed 9/11 to have been a trick as well. Despite what conspiracists said, the real truth we couldn't handle was not that the Illuminati made us go to war, but that they didn't. That no one made us do anything. Part 5. It's a big club, and you ain't in it. Okay, so you know how a lot of comedians, when they're 10 years past their peak, they stop telling jokes and instead just get up on stage and do political rants at the audience? Well, every comic who does that wishes he was George Carlin, a comedian who died in 2006 and who, towards the end, did some specials with a lot of old man ranting.
The politicians are put there to give you the idea that you have freedom of choice. You don't. You have owners. They own you.
In one of Carlin's famous old man rants, he talks about how America is owned by wealthy business interests. This bit culminates in the phrase,
"It's a big club, and you ain't in it."
That line, "It's a big club and you ain't in it," has become a popular conspiracist slogan. You see it every day in online conspiracy spaces. It captures conspiracists' core feeling of exclusion, the feeling of being an outsider to political power, speculating frantically about what the insiders are up to. It's interesting that conspiracists like this line so much, because George Carlin was not a conspiracist. On a political talk show, he name-dropped Noam Chomsky and Howard Zinn, both thinkers I'd consider reasonable leftists.
Howard Zinn and Noam Chomsky, those people aren't on TV because they have intellects and they're dissenters.
On another talk show, Carlin was accused of being a conspiracy theorist, and he responded,
"You don't need a formal conspiracy when interests converge."
That is not conspiracist talk, but conspiracists claim Carlin as one of their own because he communicates in populist language, and populism is inherently ambiguous. It's always open to conspiracist interpretation. Let's define populism as the general idea that we, the common people, are in opposition to some they, the establishment elite. This is extremely vague, and that's the problem. Populism can be leftist, it can be fascist, it can be liberal, centrist, communist. Most political ideologies today identify in some way with the people in opposition to elites. It's why a lot of American politicians put on this folksy charade. You know what I'm talking about. I grew up in a small town. I work in a farm factory. I piss in a bucket.
I grew up castrating hogs on an Iowa farm.
Just ask the single mom from Swing State who sits around the kitchen table every night castrating hogs, or whatever it is you people do.
Are you a racist? Do you hate Mexicans?
I mean, I guess it works, or they wouldn't do it. Everyone wants to brand themselves as anti-establishment. The problem, though, is anti-establishment is not in and of itself an actual political agenda, as any successful revolutionary will tell you. Because what happens after the revolution? You have to create a new establishment. And then all your anti-establishment rhetoric gets a little awkward. It's a problem Mao solved with the ingeniously Machiavellian idea of a second revolution. Now, if you don't know what kind of establishment you want and don't have a realistic plan for how to get it, well, then you're just a complainer like George Carlin, who was influenced by leftists but whose politics was basically defeatist.
It will never, ever, ever be fixed. It's never going to get any better. Don't look for it. Be happy with what you got.
Don't vote, don't revolt, don't expect things to get better. The system's rigged, just sit back and laugh. And I get that. I'm something of a professional complainer myself. But the problem is, while we're sitting back and laughing, people with an agenda are getting things done. A populist agenda is defined by where the line is drawn between us and them. Who are the people and who are the elites? What is the big club that you ain't in? And this is a matter of life and death, so you better get this right. Populism escalates into violence when tensions in society reach a breaking point. Always a risk in a culture lacking an established ritual of sending a sin-laden goat out into the desert once a year. Now, I'm a liberal social democrat. I'd prefer to improve society through democratic reforms, but I'm aware my libcuck opinions are not popular at the moment, because the right doesn't want reform. They want to punish minorities. And the left doesn't want to vote. I was going to say they want to smash, but they don't even want to do that. They want to theorize the inevitability of smashing, as they've been doing for almost 2 centuries now. So one way or another, the people are out for blood. The question is, whose blood's it going to be this time? I'm sure CEOs are a little nervous right now, but probably not that nervous. There's reliable ways to escape the guillotine. Socialism always has to compete with nationalism to channel populist resentment. And socialism has a critical weakness, which is that it's just a little too intellectual. Socialists try to create class consciousness. That is, they try to build a working class we opposed to a capitalist they. Marxist theory is not conspiracist because the line between working class and capitalist is defined by an economic relation, not by inclusion or exclusion from a conspiracy. But that's a subtle distinction that's hard to communicate to normal people. And if you use weird jargon like bourgeois and dialectic, you sound like a creepy ideologue. So popular socialists like Bernie Sanders or sort of George Carlin don't say those words. They say the 1%. They say, it's a big club and you ain't in it. That language emotionally resonates with people, but the subtlety is lost in translation. Most people find conspiracism more intuitive than dialectical materialism. Lord have mercy. Just explain to Joe Rogan that it's simply a non-idealist inversion of Hegelianism. How difficult is that? For conspiracists, the belief in a they creates a we. The line between us and them is not based on class, it's based on the conspiracy. They, the insiders, are in on it. We, the outsiders, are not. Conspiracist Gary Allen says, unless you are an insider, you are a victim. Whether you are a multimillionaire or a pauper, you have an enormous amount at stake. So conspiracism potentially unites everyone from billionaires to the unemployed in a single we against the cabal, the deep state, the globalists, the international bankers, the radical left, the reptilians. Just pick a convenient scapegoat. Who cares, right? It's conspiracism. Facts don't matter. This makes conspiracism a billionaire's best friend. At least a Gentile billionaire. It's how real estate mogul Donald Trump and world's richest tech oligarch Elon Musk were able to convince the people that they, like us, are somehow outsiders to the establishment elite. Because when they say the elite, they mean the woke elite, the DEI elite. They mean minorities. For nationalists like Trump, conspiracism is not just useful, it's essential. Nationalism constructs a native, ethnic, or racial we opposed to a foreign, invasive, or degenerate they. The populist version of nationalism, national socialism, if you will, is the idea that the native, ethnic, or racial common people are opposed by a foreign, invasive, or degenerate elite. And in a country that's not literally ruled by a foreign colonial power, the only way to support that idea is with conspiracy theories. So now is probably the time to unpin the anti-Semitism discussion that I've been pinning this whole video. I put it off to avoid a comments section overly choked with claims that anti-Semite is a slur designed to silence truth seekers. Another favorite conspiracist slogan goes, "To learn who rules over you, simply find out who you are not allowed to criticize." BTS fans? In Jewish Space Lasers, Mike Rothschild, no relation to the wealthy banking family, but, good luck explaining that to the There Are No Coincidences brigade. Mike Rothschild says, quote, "Almost all conspiracy theories are rooted in anti-Semitism, and almost all anti-Semitism is rooted in conspiracy theories." For research on this video, I made an alt account on X.com, and even I was surprised by just how fast the app pipelined me straight to Hitler. And when I say Hitler, I don't mean Hitler as metonymy for bigotry in general, I mean Adolf Hitler, Reich Chancellor of Germany from 1933 until the bullet hit his brain.
Hitler came to power, and within 6 years, Germany became the wealthiest economy in the world. How did this happen, Brother Joshua? Don't even trip, I got you. Hitler implemented 2 laws to make this happen. I could tell you about them personally, but I'd rather have a Jewish rabbi prove my point.
If you think about it, doesn't disagreeing with the pro-Hitler rabbi make you the real anti-Semite? Andrew Tate finally said, "The Matrix is the Jews." Thread. Did you know Kim Jong-un and his family are Jewish? Oh look. Passionate graphic designer Dylan Lewis Monroe made a shareable, social media-friendly summary of the protocols of the Elders of Zion. Convenient. These are some of the less offensive posts. I can't even show you most of it. While I was working on this video, I went to a European war museum that had a bunch of historic Nazi propaganda, and honestly, some of the stuff I was seeing on Twitter was actually worse. If you don't believe me, I did screenshot evidence. There is so much Nazi propaganda on my phone. Yeah, it's mostly Nazi propaganda. Oh, that was a nice dinner. Conspiracists are constantly bickering among themselves about the answer to the question, who is they? With many preferring elaborate euphemisms like globalists, elitists, Frankists, Sabbateans, communists, deep state, Zionists, oligarchists, Rothschild bankers. And if you call out the euphemisms, the conspiracist says, wow, did you just assume I was talking about all Jews when I said the deep state Rothschild Frankists? Doesn't that make you the real anti-Semite? But now that hate speech restrictions are being lifted on many platforms, a lot of them have started encouraging each other to just say Jews. Now it has to be said that a lot of these people are using Israel's crimes against Palestine as a pretext. And those crimes are real. And the Trump administration really is citing anti-Semitism to justify crackdowns on protests in universities. But it certainly doesn't help that conspiracists are exploiting the situation to promote Hitlerian Jew hatred. So why is conspiracism a funnel that leads to Hitler? Well, a bunch of reasons. One, Hitler was a conspiracy theorist. People don't usually categorize him that way, but he was. My Struggle is full of ramblings about how, the Jews control the Freemasons and they're gonna make us all speak Esperanto. I assume conspiracists must find this relatable. Just kidding. They don't read. Kids these days can't even be bothered to read Mein Kampf. Sad. 2, conspiracism is about scapegoating, and in Western culture, Jews are a traditional scapegoat. The Jews stole this from you. Israel took this from us. No, our beautiful dead wife, he's taken by Israel. Okasan, the Jews are to blame for my attraction to minors. Now that is how you scape a goat. 3, Jews are associated with a bunch of other things conspiracists are obsessed with, like Hollywood and finance. Nationalist conspiracism needs to identify an outgroup as the elite, and it's especially the association with money that makes Jews the favorite target. Because the world revolves around money, and money is mysterious. Who controls the money? The association between Jews and finance began in medieval Europe, where Jews were second-class citizens prohibited from practicing most trades. One exception was money lending, which Christians couldn't practice because the church condemned usury. So monarchs and nobles would hire a so-called court Jew to handle their finances. Most famously, Meyer Amschel Rothschild, who rose from a Jewish ghetto in Frankfurt and whose 5 sons started businesses across Europe, creating a banking dynasty that, in the 19th century, made the Rothschilds the richest private family in the world. So there is some grain of truth here, but as usual, it does not correspond to the things conspiracists are saying. The Rothschilds do not control every country's central bank, they do not own the government and media, they have nowhere near the influence of today's top oligarchs, and no, they do not eat babies. A lot of people feel that there's something occult and unnatural about finance itself. It's making money from money, which seems like evil alchemy, black magic. And this should not be conflated with reasonable criticism of finance capitalism. The conspiracist accusation is of witchery, in that the Rothschilds intentionally sunk the Titanic to create the Federal Reserve in a secret meeting on Jekyll Island, which may or may not have been attended by Satan himself, and so on. There's a saying that anti-Semitism is the socialism of fools. It appeals to people who sense that something is wrong with our economy, that money is somehow corrupting politics and media, but they don't know enough about any of those things to criticize it intelligently. Nationalists object to the elite, not just as a power over us, but as a foreign power over us. Their complaint is that the elite are not people like us. Socialist intellectuals tend to be very optimistic about transcending gut-level blood-and-soil nationalism by redirecting attention to intellectual class analysis. But anti-Semitism is the socialism of fools, and there's a lot of fools. Leftism, unfortunately, does not inoculate people against foolishness. Socialist revolutions are always at risk of turning nationalist. Stalin diverged from Marx, declaring socialism in one country, and despite his role in defeating Hitler, he eventually went on to carry out his own little purge of rootless cosmopolitans, that is, Jews. Fools of the world unite. In a video I made years ago about... hold on. Capitalism. I suggested that David Icke's reptilians could be ironically appropriated as a metaphor for the ruling class, like in the movie They Live. Some people criticize this as anti-Semitic, and I've come to basically agree with that criticism. To be clear, David Icke believes in literal extraterrestrial reptilians. It's not intended as a metaphor, though Icke does say anti-Semitic stuff all the time. I mean, he says Hitler was a Rothschild. See Appendix 2. Hitler was a Rothschild. But reptilian overlords, as a metaphor, imply elites who are alien, who are outsiders. And that makes the metaphor inherently suggestive of conspiracist bigotry. Anti-Semitism is the archetype of this kind of bigotry, though Jews are by no means the only targets. LGBT people are likewise often accused of wielding a powerful agenda due to the disproportionate prevalence of gay people in arts and entertainment. Again, grain of truth, but it's due largely to discrimination in most other industries and not due to a conspiracy. Conspiracists invoke queer-coded villainy in media, like the Capitol dandies in the Hunger Games, to insinuate that the establishment elites are gay. This has nothing to do with any kind of Marxist intellectualizing about material conditions. Populist bigots don't want equality. They want to be ruled by people they identify with, by people like them. Hatred of an outsider unites people across economic classes in the shared community of a lynch mob. So bigotry in general is useful to politicians, but conspiracist bigotry is particularly useful because it empowers them to continue railing against the establishment elite, the source of all our problems, even after they've ascended to the throne. Richard Nixon, when he was literally the president, was endlessly conspiracist about the liberal establishment.
The press is the enemy. The establishment is the enemy. The professors are the enemy.
It's ironic, considering Nixon perpetrated the most famous real conspiracy in American history, But I actually don't think that's an accident. I think conspiracist politicians are actually more likely to perpetrate actual conspiracies because their belief in a conspiracy, or their followers' belief in a conspiracy, justifies plotting a counter-conspiracy. Donald Trump really did conspire to overturn the results of the 2020 election. Stop the Steal was a counter-conspiracy which people supported on the basis of a false conspiracy theory that Biden stole the election. And now, with Trump in power once again, do we expect the right to turn on him when things do not go well? No, of course not. They'll keep digging into further layers of the deep state, looking for new scapegoats and new conspiracies to externalize the blame. That is, until this wave of fascism crashes and recedes, and then suddenly they'll deny they ever supported Trump, or they'll claim the Illuminati made them do it, that Trump was a Rothschild. No responsibility will be taken, nothing will be learned. You know, I've often thought that if you simply translated Hitler's speeches into English and updated a few details, that Americans would completely buy it. A few months ago, that thought was proven right. Hitler's AI-translated speeches go viral on TikTok, with one video topping 1 million views in troubling trend. Is this what you thought the future would be? Using AI to bring Hitler back? I'm sure they're being normal about this over on the conspiracy subreddit. Let's take a look. Hitler may not have been what we've been told he was. Here we go. This is an AI-translated speech by Hitler, where I expected to hear him babble incoherence, but he was actually spot on about a lot of issues. He calls out the elite banking class, the stock market, the illusory two-party system, the globalists, an outsider minority forming a nation within a nation, hyperinflation, etc. Blamed the Jews for everything. The poster then pastes what appears to be a ChatGPT summary of conspiracy theories Hitler believed, and then declares, promoting communist ideals, degenerate ideals, liberal ideals about sexuality and gender roles, undermining Christianity? Guys, it's the same shit happening today. The post concludes by pointing out that Nazis burned books about transsexualism, and therefore that Hitler was, dare I say it, based? I think we all owe Hitler an apology. Guys, I started out this video trying to be nice, but this post has spent the last of my patience. It's just so stupid. How can you be this stupid? I'm not asking you to be an intellectual. I'm not asking you to write a thesis on fucking Wittgenstein. I'm asking you to be 10% smarter than the absolute dumbest it is possible for a human to be. It boggles my mind how susceptible to propaganda you are. It's not like someone tricked you by giving you a transcript without telling you who wrote it. They told you it was Hitler. And when you agreed with it anyway, did you question your own judgment? No. The first thought through that infinitesimally tiny brain of yours was that the mainstream media has lied to us about Hitler. There's a reason they only let us see him speaking German. I honestly can't believe it. I cannot believe how goddamn dumb you are. It is actually astounding. Mom uses Xanax. Part 6. I can't think of a section for this title, Doctor. I'm too depressed. This is some very low vibrational crochet I'm doing here. Like, what am I even making? Like a pot holder for deformed pots? I am weaving a web of truth, okay? I don't want to hear any crap about it in the comments. So I suspect the main criticism of this video from conspiracists will be that I didn't debunk anything. And that's true. My goal has been to analyze a way of thinking, not to, litigate the evidence of JFK Jr. living in secret tunnels beneath Denver International Airport. I don't know what he's doing down there, and I'm not interested in finding out. The problem with debunking is it's not an efficient use of time. Some nerd online came up with an idea called Brandolini's Law. The amount of energy needed to refute bullshit is an order of magnitude bigger than that needed to produce it. Conspiracists can invent 100 conspiracies in the time it takes to debunk one, and even then, they'll invent a conspiracy to explain the lack of evidence for the one you just debunked. Conspiracism is a parody of critical thinking that empowers people to believe whatever they want to believe, and to dismiss anything challenging or inconvenient. Has a disaster happened that's awkward for your politics? Just say it was a hoax. Are other conspiracists inciting violence? Just say it's controlled opposition. To a conspiracist politician, every lost election is a rigged election. And there's usually a very selective and politically convenient understanding of what even counts as a conspiracy. Like conspiracists who think survivors of school shootings advocating firearms regulation are a conspiracy, but the billion-dollar industry lobbying to prevent that regulation, that's fine. That's not a conspiracy. If you spend long enough immersed in this kind of discourse, you start to lose your grip on the concept of truth. After months of conspiracy research, I feel a withered sense of reality, even as a detached and hostile observer. So what do we do with these people? Can they be reasoned with at all? The answer is usually no, and that's scary, because democracy depends on us being able to deliberate. When people can't communicate, conflicts escalate into violence. But there's also a personal cost to this. The subreddit QAnon Casualties has thousands of posts from people whose families and relationships have been torn apart by one person's obsessive conspiracism. People talk about losing someone to this, the way we talk about drug addiction. It's like conspiracy research completely takes over some people's lives. It becomes the only thing they care about, the only thing they talk about, and it changes their personality. And I'm sure people who know someone like that will ask, how can I save my loved one? And the only honest answer I can give is, I don't know. This is not a video on how to blue pill your crazy uncle. I think it's like addiction. You can't force someone to change if they don't want to change. You just can't force feed someone blue pills. That's what we have 5G towers for. But to even have a chance of getting people out, we should at least understand what gets them in. And I do have a few final thoughts about that. Why do some people get addicted to conspiracy theories? I think conspiracism must fulfill some deep psychological needs. Need one is relief from fear. I'm sorry, we're in another list within a list. To understand the structure of this video, please consult this diagram. Fear is an inherent part of politics. There's no limit to how horrible humans can be to each other, and it's very scary. I personally am terrified of politics at the moment, so I get it. But why does conspiracism soothe fear? It seems counterintuitive. The idea that the world is controlled by an evil crypto aristocracy doesn't sound very soothing. Like, are these people masochists? Do they unconsciously want to be dominated by the Illuminati? Now that I say it out loud, it actually does sound kind of hot. Okay, I get it. Michael Barquin says, the conspiracy theorist's view is both frightening and reassuring. Reassuring because it promises a world that is meaningful rather than arbitrary. So even if it's scary to think the world is controlled by Satanists, it's also a relief, because it means that everything happens for a reason. It's like religion in that way. Many people find it comforting to imagine that God has a plan for us, even if that plan involves earthquakes and tsunamis. The Lord works in mysterious ways. I personally do not find this comforting at all. I do not understand the archetypal appeal of the punishing father.
You know, it's like Daddy arrived and he's taking his belt off.
But so many people seem to be into it. So, it's a thing.
There has to be a point at which Dad comes home. Yeah, that's right. And he's pissed. Dad is pissed.
Need 2 is inflated self-esteem. There's something inherently grandiose about the whole conspiracist persona. Conspiracy researchers or investigators claim to have privileged access to secret knowledge, thanks to their bravely defiant, Galileo-like willingness to ask dangerous questions the brainwashed sheeple dare not entertain. It's such a teenage mindset, right? I remember thinking this way when I was 16. I alone question the system. Everyone else is a programmed sheep who does as they're told. But I am burdened with an inner darkness that lets me see the truth. That high school is a prison. Conspiracists take this narcissism even further. It's not enough for them to be Socrates and Sherlock Holmes. They also have to be Jesus Christ, some kind of persecuted martyr heroically fighting the forces of evil in the information war. It's like Don Quixote, the book we all pretend to have read about an aging noble who reads chivalric fantasy novels all day and deludes himself into thinking he's a knight. For conspiracists, the persona of investigator gives them a noble purpose. It makes them important. But instead of giants, they think windmills are directed energy weapons. And instead of chivalric fantasy, their literary model is like the dystopian fiction we had to read in high school. 1984, Brave New World, Fahrenheit 451, you are here. Oh my god, how can the richest man on earth have this much of a persecution complex? There's not enough ketamine in the world to fix this. Need 3 is revenged humiliation. I've noticed a lot of professional conspiracy theorists became what they are after some experience of public humiliation. David Icke was a BBC sports presenter until his 1991 appearance on the TV talk show Wogan, where he announced to the British public that he was the son of God and prophesied a plague of tidal waves and earthquakes.
The press claim that you claim to be the son of God.
Mm-hmm.
Is that true?
Yes, you see, the thing is that it's quite funny, really.
The studio audience ridiculed him live on air, and afterward he says he, quote, couldn't walk down any street in Britain without being laughed at. It was a nightmare. My children were devastated because their dad was a figure of ridicule. This got him wondering who really was behind this vicious smear campaign, and his answer to that question was apparently reptilians, an idea he promoted on a lecture tour of North America, where this sort of behavior is appreciated, where nations of the world send all their maniacs. Likewise, Naomi Wolf went from respected liberal feminist to conspiracist co-host of Steve Bannon's podcast and one of the most deranged posters in the history of X.com. No! Naomi was never the best fact-checker, but her descent fully began during a 2019 BBC radio interview about her new book on 19th century persecution of homosexuality, when the host noticed that a fundamental premise of her book was based on a misunderstanding of legal terms. Any author knows this is a nightmare scenario, but Twitter was gleefully mean about it, because Twitter is a gleefully mean place. Within a year, Naomi had become a leading COVID-19 conspiracy theorist, anti-vax, anti-mask, ranting about chemtrails and 5G towers. It was like she was taking her revenge on the concept of factuality itself.
What the heck is in our oxygen supply?
Candace Owens is a conservative pundit whose latest obsession is claiming that Judaism is controlled from within by a secret sect called Frankists, who practice ritual murder and child abuse.
These pedophiles are in power. What we are referring to is a religion that is known as Frankism, which became the Thelema religion. It is the preferred religion of the elites, okay? They believe and they worship the devil.
You can't even say that this is like a modern take on blood libel, because it's literally just blood libel. Candace Owens is a blood libel promoter. But Candace once was a progressive. In high school, she experienced racist threats from classmates, influencing her to become a critic of systemic racism. Until an incident in 2016 when she launched socialautopsy.com, a platform that would archive offensive social media posts and connect them to posters' names, which would then be searchable by employers. This did not go over well on any part of the political spectrum. The consensus was that she had created essentially a doxing database, and the internet responded, as the internet does, by doxing Candace. In other words, she was cancelled. And she blamed this on progressives, saying,
I became a conservative overnight. I realized that liberals were actually the racists, that liberals were actually the trolls. And then Trump is on the screen saying that the media is lying, that CNN is fake. It all began to resonate with me because I realized that everything he was saying was true, because I knew that the media hired hitmen.
Within a year, she was denying the existence of systemic racism and claiming that Black Americans' problems stem from welfare, handouts, broken families. You know the song and dance. So it seems like Naomi Wolf and Candace Owens' feminism and anti-racism were mostly based on personal feelings of persecution. And then, the moment they felt personally persecuted by progressives, they switched teams.
I became a conservative overnight.
Conspiracism appeals to people who feel humiliated because it externalizes blame and casts you as the hero fighting back.
2,000 years ago, had a guy called Jesus sat here and said these same things, you would still be laughing. It's really, really funny that we've not really moved on that much.
Of course, for everyday, non-celebrity conspiracists, the source of that humiliation might be more subtle. It could be a divorce, losing a job, or just a feeling that your life didn't turn out the way you wanted it to. You miss being young and full of hope, and you're like, who took that from me? Remember what the Jews took from you. God. At the beginning of The Matrix, Mr. Anderson's life sucks. He lives in a dirty bachelor pad, he hates his job, he's humiliated by his boss.
Either you choose to be at your desk on time from this day forth,
or you choose to find yourself another job.
But then he takes the red pill and learns that his job, his boss, his taxes, all of that was just an evil simulation. A lot of men in particular feel humiliated by modernity itself. Like in Fight Club, these middle-class men feel emasculated by their white-collar jobs. Cucked. And conspiracy investigation can be a way to reclaim heroic masculinity from the comfort of your desk chair. And it is a traditionally masculine activity, though recently that's changed. A lot of women get into conspiracism via alternative health and wellness, often after frustrating or humiliating experiences with mainstream medicine, which can still be quite misogynistic. A lot of women got into QAnon because of its Me Too adjacent themes of exposing powerful sex criminals and the sort of heroic femininity of saving children. Just as conspiracism has always enabled cranks to play the intellectual without real learning, QAnon enabled women to care for children without the difficult parts of caring for children. It's childcare without the child. I understand the appeal. My children are my subscribers, like and subscribe. Universal in conspiracy discourse is a longing for vindication, this sense of, you will see, then you'll be sorry. The ultimate conspiracist wish fulfillment fantasy is the end of the movie National Treasure, where conspiracist crank Nicolas Cage is no longer a disappointment to his father, he's vindicated to all the academics who mocked him, he's wildly rich, and Diane Kruger wants to fuck him. Yes, we all have our little fantasies. All of this is deeply pathetic. But I think it's important to understand because it explains why it's so difficult to reason people out of conspiracism. You're not just asking them to change their mind, you're asking them to give up an identity that makes them feel like they matter. And they're not going to do that until they find something else to fill the void. Need 4 is the denial of privilege. Another reason the left always loses, that's a good way to start a section, a little bit of optimism. Another reason the left always loses is the left wants you to check your privilege, and no one wants to do that. We all participate in systems of exploitation to some extent, not because we're evil, but just out of passive inertia. But acknowledging that is emotionally difficult because it makes you feel guilty, it makes your persecuted martyr persona look ridiculous, and it burdens you with obligations to other people, God forbid. Conspiracists, on the other hand, always assure you that you are at the bottom of the pyramid. You are here. This validates your pain and sense of victimhood, and it protects you from having to consider that you may in some way be involved in the oppression of other people. Morpheus tells Neo,
"The Matrix is everywhere. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth."
What truth?
That you are a slave, Neo.
In a way, it's the ultimate white person fantasy, that a wise black man tells you that it's you who's really the slave. Conspiracists don't think in terms of systems. To them, oppression is always an intentional act of evil. This makes them amazingly oblivious to more diffuse forms of power, like the power of men over women or the power of an empire over its colonies. In other words, conspiracists do not notice the clubs that they are in. Now, if you point this out, you'll be told that this is identity politics, which is a tactic the elites use to divide us. Okay, but those divides are already there. You just choose not to notice them except when it's convenient. And it blinds you to the truth about the real reasons for oppression and injustice. Most of us, in fact, exist somewhere in the middle of the pyramid. Most people watching this video benefit to some extent from a very unequal global distribution of power built on the exploitation of other people, other species, and the Earth itself. Conspiracists love their livestock metaphors, always comparing we the people to cattle and sheep. But how do we the people treat literal sheep and cattle? Not well. I notice most conspiracists are not vegan, and I'm not being preachy here, I'm not vegan either. Yes, I've seen all the sad vegan documentaries, and I agree, the way animals are treated is horrible. But it doesn't actually motivate me to stop eating meat. Why? Well, I've been introspecting about this, and I think it's because I am just not that good of a person. Not that I'm satanic, I don't slaughter animals for fun while chanting the names of demons. At least, not anymore. I've listened, and I'm learning. But I am complacent and selfish. I prioritize my own habits, comfort, health, and pleasure. I don't have this martyr impulse. I don't think this makes me evil. I think it makes me morally average. And when you take a vast global economy built on centuries of exploitation and fill it with morally average primates who evolved to survive in small groups with limited resources, you really don't need a conspiracy to explain the results. If you want to understand the mindset of the elites, look at yourself. Billionaires are not a different species, they're just people, often broken people, with way too much power. When you deny the humanity of the oppressors, you also conceal the potential oppressor in yourself, and in all people, even people you think of as the good guys. We are all, metaphorically, part reptile. So stop hunting for witches and Satanists and pay more attention to ordinary selfishness, ignorance, complacency, fear, envy, sadism, scapegoating, the psychology of mobs, the drive for retribution, and pay attention to how all of that interacts with power. These are the real forces behind human events, not secret schemes of shadowy supervillains. There is no epic battle between good guys and bad guys. There's humans, and there's power, and that's it. Who really controls the world? No one. There are no adults. It's just us. There is no plan, unless we make one.
Necrophilia